Chapter 328. The cat that rolled out of the grass was a little bigger than Jingtan. It had short, grayish-black fur, and if one looked closely, they could see some black spots. At this moment, after the cat rolled out of the grass, it looked around vigilantly. It was probably aware of a lot of strange smells and sounds around it. When it looked at Jingtan and the others, it was stunned. It pulled its ears, and then lowered its vigilance. But the next moment, it seemed to have suddenly heard something, and it jumped up high. The next moment, a yellow and white figure rushed over from the grass. The two cats covered their ears, arched their backs, and looked at each other with a look that said, "I'll scratch you to death." Their mouths made the kind of whining sounds when they were on guard for a fight. Jingtan looked at the clear sky. The weather was getting warmer, and the season of spring was coming soon. The war between males and nature had begun again. Of the two cats confronting each other, one was Candy Peanut, whom Jingtan had watched grow up, and the other was Tiger, who had been adopted by Feng Baijin, one of the tenants of the lakeside villa, who had rolled out of the bushes awkwardly just now. Tiger, whom Jingtan had also watched grow up, was adopted by Feng Baijin, a tenant of the lakeside villa. Now, although Jingtan didn't often go to the lakeside villa area, he could hear a lot of embarrassing things about this guy when he went there a few times. It was still the same old saying, "I still remember when it was young and fresh." When it grew up, it was all troublesome. The little guy that Jingtan had picked up from the alley in the old residential area was now bigger than Jingtan. It couldn't be helped. This guy had inherited the good genes of its mother, the leopard cat. When it was young, it was not obvious, but when it grew up, it felt different from ordinary cats. Obviously, it was two different kinds of cats. When Mao and Qin Tao talked about the leopard cat's tragic experience, it seemed that before Mao gave birth to Huzi, it was brought to a cat-fighting arena. The cats there were all fierce, and Huzi's father was probably one of the cats in the arena. Because Huzi was too restless, Feng Baijin didn't keep Huzi at home, and it couldn't. After Huzi grew up, it began to wander around its territory, and Peanut Candy was even less docile. After Mao took black rice away for the time being, Peanut Candy would go to the eastern courtyard and bark a few times. The rest of the time, it would patrol its territory and fight. Now, the territories of the two crossed, and the intersection was in the vicinity of Tsinghua University. Therefore, Jingtan would hear two different meows from ordinary cats from time to time. According to what Jingtan had seen and heard a few times, Peanut Candy usually won when the two fought. Huzi, this guy, was often injured, and the more he was defeated, the braver he became. Every time he recovered from his injuries, he would run out and continue to fight. Moreover, every time the two of them fought, there would be no other cats within a certain range. Many children also developed a sense of fear when the two of them fought. Not to mention children, even some adults would panic when they heard it. In many people's eyes, a cat's cry should be a kind of coquettish meow, as well as a kind of unique cat howl in the middle of the night during certain rippling seasons. This kind of cat was something that no one wanted to encounter, for fear of being affected. That claw coming over was not a joke, let alone a child. Sensing that Jingtan was here, Peanut Candy quickly looked in Jingtan's direction. Then, she continued to confront Huzi, as if she was waiting for a moment when the other party was not paying attention to her, so she could attack with her paw. It was not a good idea for the two to continue growling at each other. The teachers of the kindergarten had already noticed this. Although their defense against Jingtan had decreased a lot, it was different for other cats. This was a kindergarten. It was not good to hurt children. Even if they did not scratch them, it was not good to scare them. In the end, the two would definitely be at a disadvantage. Therefore, Jingtan jumped down from the concrete platform of the guardrail. The landing sound was not loud. It was difficult for people to hear, but for cats, it was enough. The two cats who were confronting each other heard the sound. They did not even look in Jingtan's direction. They ran away. If they did not run faster, they would be beaten up by Jingtan. In the past, if the two fought in the wrong place, Jingtan would rush up and slap them if he saw them. If they wanted to fight, they had to go somewhere else. Even if they wanted to fight, they had to look at the place and the situation. Seeing the two cats run away, Jingtan did not plan to chase after them. He let them continue to fight. He turned back and walked to the side of the fence. He jumped onto the concrete platform of the fence and looked at Zhuo Kitten. The child seemed to have been about to say something, but she was interrupted by Hu Zi. Zhuo Kitten did not continue to think about the two cats. She did not have any special thoughts about other cats and dogs. In her opinion, Jingtan was her brother, and the other cats were just cats. That was all. Although the new year was over, it did not affect Zhuo Kitten's mood when she received the New Year's money from Jingtan. She carefully hid the red packet in a small pocket inside her coat. Then, she began to talk about things as usual. This time, she talked about some things during the New Year holidays. Because she did not have other relatives by her side, Zhuo Kitten was brought by Lord Zeng during the New Year. After a simple explanation, Zhuo Kitten happily said to Jingtan, "Brother He, my mother is coming back." Jingtan was too surprised to hear the news. Xiao Zhuo had been away for a long time. From what he knew, Xiao Zhuo had gone to do some scientific research for the country that would not be made public in the short term. Moreover, after joining the project plan, it was different from the project applied at the school. Moreover, the project that Xiao Zhuo participated in would probably cause great harm to the body, or even life-threatening. Jingtan did not know the specifics, but he could guess some of the situations. Just like the researchers at the school, sometimes he could hear the students gossiping about who had thinned hair again, who was in poor health, who was a student who got sick because of some kind of experiment. Last year, he heard from the Jiao Pa that a few graduate students in the animal medicine field of a provincial agricultural university were infected with brucellosis. There were many similar incidents. Every year, the relevant school would specially host a report on the safety of the laboratory. The Jiao Pa also often emphasized the safety of the laboratory to Exin and the others. Fortunately, the laboratory here was separated from the student study room. After the graduate students finished the experiment in the laboratory, they washed their hands, took off their lab coats, and went back to the student study room to rest. They would go to the laboratory when it was time to do the experiment. However, some schools and research groups were not like this. When Exin and several other brothers and sisters had dinner in the small restaurant of the Jiao Wei family, Jingtan had heard that in some schools, the laboratory and the student study room were in the same room. Page, polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis, which was often involved in nucleic acid and protein experiments, was being done on the experiment table, while the students on the other side were either reading books or staring at the computer, busy and seeking death. In chemical and physical experiments, some experiments were also very harmful to the body, such as toxic reagents, heavy metal infections, and radiation problems that many people knew. Now that Xiao Zhuo could come back safely, it was indeed a happy thing. No wonder Zhuo Kitten was in such a good mood today. Although he had several opportunities to have remote video calls with the mother and son in the past few years, each time was not long. Moreover, meeting on video was different from meeting in real life. Jingtan was happy for the mother and son when he heard Zhuo Kitten continue to say, "But I have to wait until I'm in the first grade." Jingtan. It turned out that it was not time yet. With Zhuo Kitten's current level of knowledge, there was no problem at all for her to be in the first grade, but she was too young. Moreover, this was not a problem that could be solved by him directly in the first grade. It was mainly on Xiao Zhuo's side. However, according to Zhuo Kitten, Xiao Zhuo would come back in the second half of next year. It was only more than a year, and it would pass quickly. After listening to Zhuo Kitten complain for a while, "Why can't I be in the first grade now?" Jingtan gave her a handshake and left. It was time for Zhuo Kitten and the others to go to the classroom for outdoor activities. Jingtan planned to go outside the campus to relax, so he went to the old street. He looked at the entrance of Little Pomelo's school for a while, then continued to walk. He slowly walked out of the old street and came to Hengwu Square. It was almost noon. Some of the snack shops were emitting the tempting aroma of food. Jingtan thought that at this time, he was too lazy to go back to school and go to Jiao Wei's restaurant to eat. He went to Hengwu Square with familiarity. Looking at the two big words, food, he found that there were already many people sitting in the shop. He wandered to the back of the shop and climbed up to a window on the second floor. The window was not locked. The anti-theft net at the window was not dense. Zheng Tan could squeeze in from here, open the window, and jump indoors. Boss Kai was not in the room, but looking at the temperature of the tea in the teacup, he knew that Boss Kai had returned from Nanchang. He was still in the lounge just now, and probably went out at the last minute because of something. The computer on the desk was on, and there were a few documents in front of the computer. Zheng Tan jumped on the desk and looked at the documents on it. Boss Kai would not leave anything that involved business secrets here. There were too many people here, and it was not safe. Therefore, the things that were left here were not too important. Otherwise, Zheng Tan would not go up and look. He was not interested in peeping at other people's business secrets. After all, the more he knew, the more dangerous it would be. On Boss Kai's desk were a few price lists and some descriptions that made Zheng Tan dizzy. Looking at the prices of various dishes on the list, and then looking at the price list of previous years on the computer, Zheng Tan was speechless. When he ate with Jiao Pa in the cafeteria, and when he ate at Jiao Wei's for free, he did not think much of it. Looking at the numbers on the list, he realized that the prices of dishes had increased so much. With the increase in cost, the price of the dishes in the store should have increased as well. Despite the increase, there were still so many customers, which also proved that taste of food was indeed popular. Zheng Tan walked along the old street and saw many restaurants. The people in those restaurants might not be as popular as taste of food. He had to admit that food's dishes were indeed good. Below the price list, there were several wholesale prices listed by suppliers. Zheng Tan just raised his hand and glanced at the top piece of paper. He did not continue to look at it. He was waiting for Boss Kai to come back. Then, Zheng Tan's lunch could be solved. Zheng Tan did not have to wait for long before the sound of a key unlocking the door rang out. Boss Kai came in with a folder in his hand. However, he seemed to be troubled as his brows were furrowed. Following behind Boss Kai was the store manager, a somewhat plump middle-aged man. Seeing Zheng Tan, Boss Kai smiled. "Yo, black charcoal is here. Happy New Year." Boss Kai walked to the desk, opened the drawer, and handed a sorted document to the manager. "Follow this first. Oh, and ask them to send 2 servings of food later." "Yes, boss." The manager had long been used to Zheng Tan's presence. After the manager left, Boss Kai sat on the computer chair, pinched the bridge of his nose, and said to Zheng Tan, "It's good to be a cat. I don't have to worry about anything." Chapter 329. It was obvious that Boss Kai had been very busy recently. That was why he said something like that. For Boss Kai, he was not afraid of being busy. However, with the same amount of time, he could stay in the kitchen for a few days in a row to think about dishes. He was not willing to deal with those written business contracts. When he was in South City, he had asked for help. But now, there were not so many helpers. The work that was shared with Boss Kai would be heavier and take up more of his time. Boss Kai probably did not have many opportunities to complain to others after the new year, so he could not help but say a few more words to Zheng Tan. Although he did not say much, Zheng Tan could understand how the boss felt. Boss Kai had originally planned to spare some time to think about 2 more dishes. In terms of personal preferences, thinking about dishes could satisfy Boss Kai's interests. In terms of the store's performance, he had to keep introducing new products to attract more customers and retain them. Just as Boss Kai said in a document on the table, customer satisfaction and financial performance are significantly positively correlated. Employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction are significantly positively correlated. Customer satisfaction completely mediates the relationship between employee satisfaction and financial performance. After settling the customers, the rest was not a problem. The competition at Hengwu Plaza was very intense. Everyone was trying their best to figure out how to get the young people around them to fork out more money. As the owner of the restaurant, Boss Kai was naturally doing the same. After all, this could directly reflect the satisfaction of the people at his restaurant. Even though taste of food was very popular now, he could not afford to be careless. He had to seize the opportunity to spread his name. Now, some customers who could not find a seat or were in a hurry would order takeout packages in advance. After all, there was no takeout service here. After lunch, Enchanting did not leave immediately. He watched Boss Kai drink some tea and then continue working. He opened a file on the computer. It was a new dish that would be launched after the new year. Enchanting's lunch just now was one of them. It tasted good and could satisfy the appetite of the people here. The other document contained the names of some restaurants that could be found all over Chuhua City. This seemed to be Boss Kai's diary. Some of the restaurants had related records behind them, such as, what dishes did he eat at XX restaurant in XX year, XX month, XX day, XX month, XX day, 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 XX day. This was one of Boss Kai's interests. He had this habit since a long time ago. He always had a notebook with him, and after recording, he would organize it and keep it together. In addition to tasting food everywhere, Boss Kai seemed to be planning to hire a few chefs. In short, he was busy enough. After staying in Boss Kai's lounge for a while, Enchanting decided to leave. He didn't take the stairs. After all, this was a restaurant and there were many customers in the restaurant. Enchanting couldn't take the stairs. Besides, it was more convenient and faster to go through the window. Looking at the black cat sneaking out of the window, Boss Kai smiled and shook his head. He then continued to deal with the documents in his hand. He knew that some people in the restaurant privately complained that it was a waste to give such good food to a cat. Besides, this cat was not the boss's own cat, so it couldn't catch mice in the restaurant. It was simply a scam. Boss Kai didn't explain the reason. Some things didn't need to be known to others. Besides, he thought that the black cat was quite good. He didn't think that the black cat couldn't taste good food like the employees complained in private. It was very sensitive to the subtle changes in the expression of others when they were eating. It could infer whether the other party was satisfied with the food or not. The black cat also had some subtle changes in its expression when it was eating. It was very similar to humans, but other cats didn't. Just as Yi Hao and the others had said, this black cat was different and could not be judged by common sense. While Boss Kai was analyzing Enchanting's expression when he was eating the new dish, Enchanting went downstairs through the window. He didn't expect to hear someone calling his name after just a few steps. He looked back and saw Feng Baijin coming out of the food taste. After school at noon, Feng Baijin came to the food taste for lunch. He liked the food very much. He ordered it too late, so his order number was at the back. He came and waited for a while before he got the food. He didn't have any classes in the afternoon, so he could afford to wait. He didn't eat here because the seats were already full. He didn't expect to see the familiar cat when he came out with the food. He shouted to confirm, and it was really the cat. Feng Baijin knew that the black cat often came here and had many acquaintances, so he didn't think much about it. He put the food in the trunk of his scooter and was ready to go back. He looked up and saw the black cat running towards him. Feng Baijin's first thought was that the food in the trunk had attracted the cat's attention. However, when he saw Enchanting jump on the scooter but didn't scratch the trunk, he didn't say anything. He understood that the cat wanted to hitch a ride. After eating, Enchanting was a little lazy and didn't want to leave. He wanted to walk slowly back, but since he met Feng Baijin, he didn't want to continue walking. He wanted to hitch a ride. Feng Baijin rode the scooter into Chuhua University. Since the cat behind him didn't get off, he took a detour to the eastern courtyard. When he passed by a road, 2 cat meows came from the forest. Jingtan knew which 2 cats it was as soon as he heard it. Feng Baijin obviously knew as well. Feng Baijin stopped the scooter and shouted towards the forest. Huzi, time to eat. Why didn't he shout, time to go home? Because Feng Baijin knew that the attraction of time to go home was definitely not as attractive as the words time to eat. As long as he shouted time to eat, even if Huzi was in the middle of a fight, he would come over immediately. Sure enough, as soon as Feng Baijin shouted, the aggressive cat meows stopped. Jingtan had already jumped off the scooter. It wasn't far from the eastern courtyard, so there was no need to take up space. Whoosh, a gray shadow jumped out from the grass. Compared to the appearance Jingtan saw in the morning, Huzi now had 2 more scratches on his body. Originally, his attack power was slightly lower than peanut candy. His fur was also short, so he didn't have much defense power. This was why this guy lost 9 out of 10 times. Feng Baijin looked at the wounds on Huzi's body and felt helpless. The wounds weren't deep. He just needed to rest at home for a few days. Huzi's recovery ability was very strong. This was the first time Feng Baijin had raised a cat. The experience of raising a cat was full of tears. He didn't care about it scratching tables, doors, and smashing things. As for the fact that many people said that cats would give gifts, Feng Baijin would definitely laugh. Can you imagine the feeling of waking up early in the morning and finding a fat mouse that was played to death next to your pillow? That feeling was simply F***ck. A mouse in the house? The house was cleaned very well, so there shouldn't be so many mice. Aunt Li, who was in charge of housework at Feng Baijin's place, was still puzzled. Until one day, when she was walking in the neighborhood, a resident saw her and greeted her with a smile. Your cat must be very patient. It caught all the mice in my house. While Feng Baijin was thinking, Huzi had already jumped onto the scooter's trunk and meowed. Go back and eat your cat food. It's not suitable for you. The taste is too strong. Feng Baijin picked up the cat on the scooter's trunk and put it in the basket in front of the scooter. Huzi also cooperated. He squatted in the basket, put his chin on the side of the basket, and looked down at Peanut Candy who jumped out from the grass. Peanut Candy stared over there and wagged her tail vigorously. The meaning of a cat wagging its tail was different from that of a dog. A dog wagged its tail when it was in a good mood, but a cat wagged its tail when it was happy. There were many meanings in a cat's tail wagging. Different amplitude and strength reflected different emotions. It could be thinking about something, or it could be angry. For example, Peanut Candy was wagging her tail for the latter. Feng Baijin was talking to Jingtan and Huzi about not eating dead rats. As soon as he saw Peanut Candy, he didn't say anything and just drove away. Every time Feng Baijin saw Peanut Candy, he would take a detour. He couldn't help it. His cat attracted hatred, and he also suffered. Peanut Candy could chase cars for a long distance. The few claw marks on Feng Baijin's scooter were made by Peanut Candy. Feng Baijin's family always thought that it was Huzi, or else they would be even more worried. Peanut Candy didn't even care about Xiaogua, let alone Feng Baijin, who had no relationship with him. Every time he saw Peanut Candy, Feng Baijin was scared witless. However, probably because Jingtan was here, Peanut Candy didn't chase after him this time. After Feng Baijin and the others left, Peanut Candy was no longer that unapproachable. It became a harmless and well-behaved cat again. It walked in front of Jingtan and wanted to rub against him. Jingtan ignored it. He brushed Peanut Candy's long fur and didn't see any wounds. As for Feng Baijin's warning about not eating dead rats, Peanut Candy really didn't seem to have touched them. He hadn't touched them since he was young, so he didn't know if he could smell something wrong. Speaking of dead rats, in the early years of the Jiaopa, in order to prevent Jingtan from dying like the 2 cats in the yard who ate dead rats, the Jiaopa trained Jingtan. From several types of rodenticides to dead rats, Jingtan knew a little bit about them. The Jiaopa also dissected several dead rats that had been poisoned by different types of rodenticides. Zheng Tan watched the whole process, but it was still disgusting. Later, when he found out that Zheng Tan never ate rats, the Jiaopa didn't worry about that anymore. There were many people who raised cats in the countryside. Cats, dogs, and even children were raised half-free. In order to prevent accidents, not many people used rodenticides. However, in the city, there were many people who used rodenticides. The density of the residents was high, and relationships weren't that good. If one family didn't use rodenticides, other families would have plenty of them. Who would care if one family raised a cat? Therefore, many people who raised cats were worried about the problem of poisoned rats. However, the good thing was that it seemed that almost no one in the yard used rodenticides. The poisoned cats were only poisoned after they ran far away. This day, Zheng Tan walked to the smell of food again at noon. He climbed through the window and entered Boss Kai's lounge. Boss Kai was sorting out a document. He was staring at the computer screen with his fingers tapping on the keyboard. When he heard the sound, he looked over. "Yo, Black Charcoal is here." As he spoke, Boss Kai tidied up some of the printed documents on the desk to make some space. Zheng Tan was going to jump over to the desk, but when he was about to jump, he suddenly stopped. He took back his foot and sniffed the air hard to distinguish the smell in the room. Boss Kai looked at Zheng Tan strangely. In the past, when the cat came in through the window, he would jump directly on the chair or the table. What was wrong with him now? Zheng Tan sniffed at Boss Kai's desk and other places. He stepped back a little and squatted on the windowsill to think. No matter what Boss Kai said, Zheng Tan didn't go in. Chapter 330. Black Charcoal, what's the matter with you? Boss Kai couldn't help but stand up from the computer chair. He walked to the window and looked outside. There was nothing special. He then looked at the black cat on the windowsill. It was still staring at the room as if there was something scary in the room. Black Charcoal? Boss Kai shouted again. The uneasiness and impatience in his voice grew deeper. He couldn't help but think of some things that happened in Southern City. The business world was like a battlefield. There were so many unscrupulous things. He wasn't good at that. Most of the time, he relied on his friends there to help him. Later, there were fewer things. Until now, when the strange situation happened again, Boss Kai recalled some of the things that happened in the past. He didn't have any helpers now, and the security in the store needed to be strengthened. During the new year, he went back to Southern City and asked some friends to introduce some reliable people to him, but it would take some time before they could come to work. What was going on? Boss Kai always thought that animals were more sensitive to danger than humans. Besides, he knew that this black cat was different, so he trusted it more. Because of this, he couldn't help but feel nervous. The unknown danger made it hard for people to calm down. Zheng Tan didn't want to ignore Boss Kai. He was just thinking. He stayed on the windowsill and didn't even go over the window. He smelled something, but from Boss Kai's reaction, he didn't seem to notice it. This kind of smell wasn't strong, and it was difficult to distinguish. People couldn't smell it with their sense of smell. Even though Zheng Tan's sense of smell was much more sensitive than that of ordinary people, he could only smell a little bit of it. Besides, Zheng Tan had never smelled this kind of smell before, but it was familiar. He should have smelled something similar before. No matter whether he had smelled it before or not, it made Zheng Tan feel danger. It was the kind that made him turn around and run away, as if he was afraid that he couldn't avoid it. While he was thinking, Boss Kai saw that Zheng Tan didn't respond, so he reached out to poke Zheng Tan to wake Zheng Tan up. But when Zheng Tan looked up and saw the fingers coming closer and closer, he hurriedly retreated. Unfortunately, there was no space behind him, and he slipped and almost fell from the second-floor window. If it wasn't for his quick reaction and holding onto the edge of the window, it would be hard to say what would have happened. Seeing Zheng Tan acting like this, Boss Kai looked at his hands and felt even more uneasy. Although this cat was not very approachable, it was okay to poke it occasionally. It was not like this cat was avoiding the god of plague. He didn't know if he was overthinking things, but his growing uneasiness was real, and he couldn't calm down to think about many things. After a few seconds of silence, Boss Kai called the manager of the store and told him that the store would be closed in the afternoon for internal renovations. The customers who made reservations in the afternoon would call the store one by one to apologize. Those who wanted a refund would get a refund. Those who didn't want a refund would get additional compensation or an extension of time. The manager definitely knew what to do. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to be the manager. After the call, Boss Kai made a few more calls. Jing Tan listened and guessed that Boss Kai was going to ask someone to come over and check on the store. In fact, Boss Kai could also secretly ask someone to check on the store first and keep the store open. But he was afraid that if something happened, the store would be ruined. The loss would be much more than the profit he made in the afternoon. The store was his years of hard work. Of course, Boss Kai wasn't worried about the food. Because he had been framed in Nanjing City, he had put a lot of effort into the cleanliness of the kitchen. Whether it was the purchase of the food or the purchase of the food, there were people in charge of it. After the food was delivered, there were also people in charge of testing for pesticide residues. Even the tap water was checked. There was no way that the food would be poisoned. When he called just now, Boss Kai asked the person in charge of the testing in the purchasing department again. He confirmed that the recent troubles were only limited supply and high prices. Other than that, there were no other problems. If it wasn't the food, then what was it? Was it because of the food, or because of himself? Boss Kai knocked on his forehead and thought of all kinds of possibilities. He wasn't as smart as others and couldn't think of a solution. He planned to go out for a walk. When he reached the door, he stopped and looked back at the window sill. Black Charcoal, can you do me a favor? Jing Tan stood on the window sill and hesitated for a moment. He could roughly guess what Boss Kai wanted him to do. He had planned to sneak back to Tsinghua University and go to Jiao Wei's small restaurant for a meal. But when he heard Boss Kai's words, Jing Tan hesitated. Speaking of which, Boss Kai was really nice to him. Every time he came over, he would give him good food and drinks. Even if Jing Tan slept on the sofa for the whole afternoon, Boss Kai wouldn't say anything, nor would he chase him away. Thinking about it this way, Jing Tan felt that she would be too heartless if she were to slip away. Since the other party was so nice to her, it was only right for her to help out now that she was in trouble. Besides, this favor was not a big deal. Jing Tan didn't leave the room. Although nothing would happen if he left, Jing Tan just couldn't get over it. He jumped down from the second floor and followed Boss Kai to the front door. It was the peak hour in the restaurant. People were coming and going. Some of the customers knew Boss Kai, but not many of them. They just greeted him when they saw him. Boss Kai felt that the muscles on his face were stiff from smiling. No one knew how uncomfortable he was in his heart. When he saw the black cat not far from the door, Boss Kai was slightly relieved. It was good that the cat didn't leave directly. There was a sign on the door that said it was closed in the afternoon. Many people asked about it, and the manager explained it with a polite smile. Everything was normal. Boss Kai led Jing Tan into the restaurant and walked around from the side. At this time, many people were eating happily. Some were staring at the menu in their hands, and some were chatting with their friends while waiting for their food. Jing Tan walked against the wall. With Boss Kai blocking him, few people noticed him, and few were interested in looking at him. Jing Tan didn't care about the people around him. He carefully identified the smell in the room. He didn't know if it was because the smell of the food was too strong, or if it wasn't there in the first place. In short, Jing Tan couldn't smell the kind of smell in Boss Kai's lounge. He walked around the hall on the first floor, and then went up the stairs to the second floor. There were many small rooms on the second floor. People sitting in the small rooms wouldn't notice Jing Tan. Only people walking around in the corridor would notice him. At this time, Boss Kai didn't care about those things. Someone he knew asked Boss Kai why he let a cat walk around here. Boss Kai made up a few excuses, and the other person didn't really care about these things, so he didn't ask more. Jing Tan walked around the second floor. Just like the first floor, he didn't smell that kind of smell. He thought that the smell was too faint to distinguish, and it was probably suppressed by the smell of the food. Besides, there were so many people walking around, and all kinds of smells were mixed. It was reasonable that he couldn't recognize it. Thinking that maybe he didn't recognize the smell, Jingtan suddenly stopped and looked at a table next to him. Boss Kai saw that Jingtan didn't have any special reaction from the first floor to the second floor, and he relaxed a lot. This meant that there was no problem with the place where he ate, and the customers wouldn't be affected. Was it only his room that had a problem? Was there really someone who wanted to deal with him? Boss Kai started to think again when he saw the black cat. He suddenly stopped and looked at the table next to him. This table wasn't close to the dining area on the second floor. Sometimes, it was placed here to make it easier to collect the tableware. Most of the things placed here were the staff's, and it was also close to the staff lounge. Was it the staff's problem? Jingtan also thought that maybe one of the staff had a problem with Boss Kai and deliberately set him up, but he didn't smell that kind of smell when he walked to the staff lounge. He even followed Boss Kai into the lounge. The two staff who were resting were so scared that they stood up immediately, afraid that their boss would think that they were slacking off. Staff lounge, no problem. In that case, after walking out of the staff lounge, Boss Kai looked at the small room next to him. It was the resting place for the cleaners. Because there weren't many waiters, it wasn't big. Opening the door, Jingtan followed Boss Kai into the room. At this moment, there were only two middle-aged women waiting for their shift. There were all kinds of cleaning supplies on the shelves. Every cleaner had their own cabinet, where the cleaning supplies were placed. Different people were responsible for different places. If there was a problem, they would go to the person who was responsible for that place at that time. Seeing Boss Kai, the two cleaners were very restrained. They didn't look like the kind of people who were good at flattery. They did a good job in the last few months at the end of last year without any problems. Moreover, they had a lot of experience in this field before and hadn't been reprimanded by their previous boss. It could be seen that they had done a good job in cleaning before. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been retained until now. There was no change in the number of cleaners this year. Boss Kai smiled stiffly and talked to the two cleaners. He knew that one of them was the one who cleaned his room this morning. If he looked carefully, he could see a bit of guilt in this person's eyes. However, Boss Kai didn't think that this person would harm him. Some people would try to get some benefits in private. As long as it was within the acceptable range, Boss Kai wouldn't pursue it. This was also a kind of balance. While chatting with the two cleaners, Boss Kai also paid attention to Jingtan until he saw Jingtan stop in front of a cabinet. Whose cabinet is that? Boss Kai pointed at the cabinet and asked. Boss. It's mine. The one who was responsible for cleaning Boss Kai's room in the morning said. He looked very nervous. No matter how good Boss Kai's temper was, he couldn't hold back a smile now. Open the cabinet. Boss Kai said. The two cleaners thought that Boss Kai was checking on them, so it was reasonable for Boss Kai to do a spot check and check the equipment. However, when they saw the look of panic on the cleaner's face, Boss Kai's calm face darkened. The cleaner opened the cabinet and showed Boss Kai the cleaning tools inside. At the same time, she took the initiative to admit her mistake. She sold the cleaning agent in the store and used the cheap cleaning agent in her own house. The cleaning agent in the store was of good quality, and the price was much higher than that of ordinary cleaning agents. Many cleaning agents outside cost 3 to 5 yuan for a 500g bottle, but the cleaning agent in the store cost 30 to 50 yuan for a bottle. Jingtan looked at the middle-aged woman who tried her best to admit her mistake. What she said should be true, but Jingtan did smell that kind of smell from here. This person's cabinet smelled different from other cabinets, so he didn't want to go near it just now. Jingtan looked at the middle-aged woman's hands. It was a pair of hands that had worked hard. They were old and wrinkled, indicating that this person often did low-level work. At the same time, Jingtan also noticed that the cleaner's fingers, which were tugging nervously, had white stripes on them. They were different from the half-moon marks on a normal person's fingernails. Chapter 331. In fact, when Jingtan came in, he smelled the smell that made him very uncomfortable. It was slightly stronger than the smell in Boss Kai's lounge, and the source of the smell was the nervous cleaner. Looking at the cleaner's fingernails, Jingtan didn't know whether this Andy knew she was in a very dangerous situation. In addition to the cleaning tools, the store distributed cleaning clothes and shoes. The cleaner at work would put her clothes in the wardrobe. Jingtan could smell the stronger smell from the wardrobe. Of course, it was only relative. People might not be able to recognize it with their sense of smell. Jingtan couldn't tell Boss Kai in detail. Moreover, Boss Kai had realized that there might be something wrong with the bottle of cleaner, so he took action quickly. In the afternoon, the food flavor store was closed, and the door was closed. When people outside walked past, they could hear some knocking and the sound of an electric drill. Looking at the renovation sign hanging outside, they didn't think much about it. Many stores would renovate on weekdays, so that they could make a better profit on weekends. In the food flavor store, there was indeed work going on. Boss Kai had noticed some places that needed minor repairs, and the layout also needed to be adjusted slightly. After all, people had different habits in different places. This was a good opportunity to tidy it up. His lounge was the main place for the renovation, and it needed to be completely cleaned and redecorated. Jingtan didn't go back in the afternoon. He stayed there and watched Boss Kai look for help. Boss Kai's hands were shaking when he received the test results. The several highly toxic heavy metals made him panic. The test results showed that some of them were insecticides. Nowadays, many people didn't use those heavy metals to grow vegetables or kill insects. Many countries had even reduced or stopped using them, but some places still used them. As for how the insecticide got into the cleaner's bottle, even the cleaner herself didn't know. If they really wanted to harm you, they wouldn't spray this kind of cleaner. That way, the toxicity would be reduced a lot, and the effect would be slower if they sprayed it here. To achieve their goal, it's better to spray the insecticide directly, the friend who helped Boss Kai with the test said to Boss Kai. According to the cleaner, she felt that Boss Kai was a good person. She felt bad for taking advantage of Boss Kai in private. When she was cleaning, she even wiped Boss Kai's keyboard and computer hard. This was also the reason why Jingtan avoided Boss Kai's hand, because Boss Kai's hand had the same smell. Thinking about it, if the bottle of detergent was replaced with the kind of insecticide that didn't have any smell, the computer, keyboard, desk, sofa, window, and other places that Boss Kai came into contact with every day would be covered with poison. Anyone who lived in such a room for a long time couldn't help but tremble. Don't worry, it might be an accident. Anyway, you'd better investigate this matter carefully. Of course, if it's really an accident, I can only say that you're a little unlucky this year. Lao Kai, this is your zodiac year, right? That person just said it casually, but he didn't expect Boss Kai to seriously nod his head. The other person opened his mouth, but in the end, he could only remain silent. Although he usually joked with others that his zodiac year was a little unlucky, he didn't think so in his heart. He didn't believe in those things, because his zodiac year didn't have any big ups and downs. However, it was hard to say for Boss Kai. He even encountered such a thing. Fortunately, he found out in time and didn't make a big deal out of it. Before the lounge was cleaned and renovated, Boss Kai temporarily separated a room on the second floor of food flavor. When the lounge was renovated and ventilated for a period of time, he would tear down this compartment. As for the investigation, Boss Kai didn't have many connections in Chuhua City, and he didn't have any foundation. If he really wanted to investigate something in depth, it was naturally best to find a local. Therefore, Boss Kai went to find Yi Hao. At that time, Chairman Shu specially asked for it, so naturally, Yi Hao had to give some face. Besides, this was just a small matter, and it didn't cost much. The result that Jingtan found out a week later was the same as what Boss Kai's friend said. This matter was indeed just an accident. The cleaner's hometown was in the suburbs. Someone in the cleaner's family worked in a factory that manufactured detergent. During the new year, they were given large bottles of detergent. In order to save money, they would specially use a spray bottle to dilute the detergent before using it. Someone had rented a piece of land next to her house to plant flowers. The pesticide was also from that person's family. However, a lot of it was lost in the snowstorm this year, so that person didn't plan to plant flowers anymore. After moving some things away, he closed the door. During the new year, the cleaner's house was also lively. There were many places that the adults couldn't take care of. A child went to the flower bed and found a few bottles. Coincidentally, there was a small plastic factory that produced this kind of spray bottle. The spray bottles used by everyone were similar, but those children didn't know. Seeing that the color was not bad, they thought that it was the same as their own detergent, so they took it back and sprayed it everywhere. As it didn't have a strong smell, no one paid attention to it. Later, when the child didn't play with it, he directly put it on the table. After that, someone mistakenly thought that it was their own detergent and wanted to empty a few bottles to store other things. All of them were gathered into a large bottle and poured out from the large bottle whenever they wanted to use it. At that time, the adults were too busy, so this work was done by the children. The children didn't notice the difference in viscosity between the bottle of pesticide and their own detergent. After pouring it directly into the undiluted large bottle, they ran to play. Because of this, from then on, all the detergents used in the cleaner's house were mixed with insecticides. Although the toxicity of the insecticides was reduced a lot, the house, especially the room where the cleaner lived, had been sprayed everywhere by the kid who took the insecticides from the flower bed. Therefore, the toxicity of the insecticides was much higher. This was a slow process of poisoning. Their daily breathing, skin contact, and so on would all poison them. However, during this process, the cleaner didn't notice it. Perhaps there were some symptoms of poisoning, but they didn't care. Sometime after the new year, the cleaner came to the city and also brought 2 bottles of detergent. He cleaned at food flavor for a period of time. Because his family members were sick and he was short of money, he set his eyes on the detergent that was given out by the shop. Each bottle was worth dozens of yuan. A few days after changing the detergent, Jingtan came across it. Pesticides and rodenticides were things that the Jiao Pa once talked about when he taught Jingtan a lesson. That day, when Feng Baijin mentioned the dead rat, it also reminded Jingtan of the memory from a few years ago. That was why he was able to quickly recognize the threat when he jumped out of the window. He just wasn't sure what it was. After all, there were many kinds of pesticides and rodenticides. Even if some of them looked the same and people smelled the same, a cat's sense of smell could still distinguish the differences. After learning the truth, Yi Hao talked to Boss Kai and sighed. That guy always gets into trouble. He's a troublemaker. The guy and troublemaker that Yi Hao mentioned were obviously referring to Jingtan. If Jingtan had been there, Yi Hao might not have said these things. However, at that time, Jingtan wasn't there. Boss Kai didn't think that it was Jingtan's fault. This incident was an accident. Since it happened to him, he could only blame it on his bad luck. Even if the poison used in his lounge wasn't very toxic, what if it had been used for a long time? Who could guarantee that he would be safe? Besides, he was running a food store. This kind of store was most afraid of being involved with poison. Even the slightest incident could affect the whole business. It's not causing trouble. It's blocking disasters, Boss Kai said. Yi Hao recalled what had happened in the past. Indeed, he did feel that way. Speaking of which, ever since the taste of food was introduced, that cat hadn't come to victorious return for a long time. If he ran into it again, he would have it walk around and see if it could block any potential disasters. Jingtan was completely unaware of Yi Hao's thoughts. After the incident at Boss Kai's, the number of times he went there had decreased. In the past, he would go there for a meal every 2 days. Now, he would go there once a week. It wasn't that Jingtan was afraid that the poison in Boss Kai's lounge hadn't dissipated. He had learned from Boss Kai's friend who was in charge of testing that the poison in the lounge wasn't very toxic. It was just that the smell at the time reminded him of something bad, and he felt threatened. But now, Jingtan didn't go there as often because Boss Kai's lounge was too small. There were too many things piled up, and it wasn't very convenient to eat there. Every time Boss Kai saw Jingtan, he would be very enthusiastic. Whenever Jingtan went there, he would have someone prepare a meal for him. Boss Kai felt a lot more at ease with this cat around. When the cleaner was fired, Boss Kai saw that there were several people in the cleaner's house who were chronically poisoned, and the medical expenses were high, so he didn't deduct any of their wages or pursue compensation. The cleaner also knew what to say and what not to say. After leaving, he didn't mention the taste of food to anyone. If it were Yi Hao, he definitely wouldn't have let it go so easily, even if it was just an accident. This day, Jingtan followed Jiao Pa to the cafeteria for 2 days, and stayed at Jiao Wei's restaurant for 3 days. He wanted to change his taste, so he came to the taste of food again. After eating, he didn't stay for long. He planned to go home and secretly go online to see the netizens scolding a certain celebrity with the surname Zhao, who was arrested before the new year. Now, no one continued to call him young master. Instead, they called him hypocrite. During the new year, because of the snow disaster, no one paid attention to this matter. After the incident, a few people who had a grudge against a certain young master started to make waves to make their presence known again. When Jingtan was bored, he also went to watch the scolding battle. Unexpectedly, after taking 2 steps, Jingtan was stopped by someone again. This time, it wasn't Feng Baijin, but Mao, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Mao officially became a father on New Year's Day. As he wished, he had a daughter. Because she was born on New Year's Day, her nickname was Yuan Yuan. There were even people who teased the father and daughter. One was Mao, while the other was Yuan. If the word money was added, then the price would be 10 times higher. This time, Mao came here to deliver an invitation. It was his daughter's 100th day banquet, so the few families here had to make the trip themselves. Celestine and Jiao Pa also sent an invitation. He had just delivered an invitation from Triumph and bought some food. He knew that the dishes at the Taste of Food were good, but he rarely came here. It was rare for him to come here, so he bought some food. Later, he still had to go to the old lady's place in the lakeside villa, so he bought some food and brought it over to share with the old lady. That great aunt was old, but her appetite was quite good. Black coal, let's go. Let's go see great aunt together. Mao got into the car and waved at Jingtan. Chapter 332. Mao had changed his car. It was no longer the ordinary car he used to drive. In the past, Mao drove for his own convenience. Now, he had to drive his wife and children from time to time, so he had a higher requirement for safety. After all, he had the money to buy a better car. Jingtan saw a lot of children's products in the car. There was also the smell of milk. Mao was in a good mood. He kept talking about his daughter, Yuan, on the way. However, no matter how Mao praised his daughter, Jingtan did not say anything as he had not seen her with his own eyes. When they arrived at the lakeside villa area, Jingtan did not stay in the car to follow Mao to the old lady's house. Instead, he went to Feng Baijin's house. When Jingtan got close to the house, he heard Feng Baijin roaring. "If you bite my cable again, I will throw your tiger toy away. Do you understand? I will throw it away completely." Feng Baijin only had classes in the morning, but he skipped all of them. According to the current arrangement, Feng Baijin had to skip the first 2 classes in the morning. If he chose to skip the last 2 classes, it would depend on how long he slept. According to the rules of Tsinghua University, there were morning exercises for freshmen and sophomores. Feng Baijin basically did not go. He had to do morning exercises from elementary school to high school. Why would he still do morning exercises in university? F***ck. If you want to deduct marks, just do it. Feng Baijin had been sleeping in the morning. He played games until late last night, so he could not get up today. When he woke up, he found that the cable on the computer table was bitten again. He originally wanted to download a few songs to his MP3 player, but now it seemed that he had to buy a new cable. As for the tiger toy that Feng Baijin mentioned, Jingtan knew about it. Back then, when he fished the tiny Huzi out of the alley, he was the one who placed the furry tiger toy next to Huzi. Later on, Huzi directly treated it as his own toy. Even when he moved out of his nest, he would bring the toy over. Sometimes, he would hug the toy to sleep, just like when he was young. Even after he grew up, this habit did not change. Every once in a while, Aunt Lee, who worked as a nanny, would take out the toy to wash it and then dry it on the balcony. Every time this happened, Huzi would squat on the balcony and guard it. Every once in a while, he would look at the drying rack on the balcony for fear that it would be thrown away. The door of the house was open. Jingtan did not climb through the window and walked in directly. Aunt Lee was mopping the floor. When she saw Jingtan, she did not say anything and continued to mop the floor. Jingtan was already a regular here, so it was not strange. When Jingtan went to Feng Baijin's room on the second floor, he saw Huzi lying in its own nest, its two front paws tightly holding the tiger toy, not letting Feng Baijin take the toy away. After Feng Baijin pulled the tiger toy's head, he snorted and let go. Huzi hurriedly moved the toy back into the nest. "I'll let it go this time. Next time, even if I don't throw your toy away, I'll tear it into pieces. Let's see what you're hugging while you sleep. Do you know about dismemberment?" Jingtan had heard similar words many times. Every time, it would start with, "if you." "I'll," and after a while, it would end with, "I'll let it go this time." Next time, there were indeed a few scars on Huzi's body, but looking at his appearance, he seemed to be in good spirits and would recover soon. It was not that he could not go out, but every time he was injured, he would be watched by the 3 people in the room and would not be allowed to go out. Jingtan looked at the computer that Feng Baijin had turned on. On the screen was a game. When Feng Baijin had nothing to do, he would stay at home and make games. Unlike commercial production, Feng Baijin made games based on his preferences. Jingtan knew that Feng Baijin made 2 games. One was Cat and Cat. This game was not novel in nature. There were too many cat and cat games. Feng Baijin's game had a lot of downloads. Firstly, the cartoon cat heads in the game were very cute. When they were removed, they had different animation effects and different cat sounds. One of the original cat heads in the game was Huzi. When the cat head was not removed, it was still very cute. When it was removed, it looked like it had been beaten up. Its sound was also the same as Huzi's. The second game was called Cat and Mouse. Honestly speaking, it was not novel. In the beginning, catching mice was similar to some small action games. What many people liked was that after catching mice, they would use them to scare people. For example, they would put the mice on the owner's bed, quilt, drawer, bag, and so on. If this kind of thing was placed in a game, everyone would play happily. However, in real life, it was definitely a scam. Feng Baijin had a deep understanding of this. Feng Baijin integrated his own personal experience into the game. However, people who played the game would not know the developer's history behind the tiers and tiers. In fact, Jingtan was looking forward to Feng Baijin's future games. These were only his own practice works. Many things were not perfect. It was hard to say what would happen in the future. It seemed that Feng Baijin might develop further in this direction. When he went downstairs and went out, Aunt Lee was sitting on the sofa on the first floor drinking tea and watching TV. She was holding a teacup and wearing a red bracelet on her wrist. It was a very simple kind of bracelet made of red string. Aunt Lee was probably in her zodiac year. Jingtan had not seen her wear it before. After leaving Feng Baijin's place, Jingtan went to the old lady's place to take a look. He squatted not far away and waited for Mao. He did not want to go to the old lady's house. Every time he saw the old lady, Jingtan always felt strange in his heart. He could not tell what the feeling was, so it was better not to see her. When he came, Mao said that they would go to Celestine's place to eat in the afternoon. He had already called the Jiaopa, so Jingtan did not go back. He waited for Mao to come out from the old lady's place and hitched a ride with him. Speaking of which, Celestine's son was already 1 year old. His first birthday celebration was close to Air Mao's daughter's 100-day celebration. Jingtan did not go to Celestine's house many times. Every time he went, he felt that Wei Xiaobei had changed a lot. The last time he came, Jingtan remembered that Wei Xiaobei could only crawl on the foam mat with difficulty. Now, he could walk 2 steps. Wei Xiaobei was Celestine's son's nickname. When he was born, he was very fat. Although he did not look like a lump of meat now, he was still a bit fatter than other children of the same age. When Jingtan and Air Mao arrived at Celestine's house, Wei Xiaobei was holding onto the wall to walk. When he saw Jingtan and Air Mao, he was not afraid. Instead, he happily walked towards them. However, after taking 2 steps, he fell down. The floor and the walls were pasted with a layer of soft cushions. The furniture in the house and the hard corners were all covered with soft cushions, so there was no need to worry about him bumping into them. Therefore, Fatty Wei wouldn't be injured even if he fell to the ground. After turning over, Wei Xiaobei did not cry. He continued to happily walk over. This time, he did not walk and directly crawled. This way, he would be faster. Air Mao wrapped up Wei Xiaobei who had crawled in front of him. "Little fatty, come and call me second uncle. Call me second uncle." Wei Xiaobei laughed happily. Then, he sneezed in front of Air Mao's face, causing Air Mao's face to be covered in saliva. Air Mao wiped his face and silently cursed that his daughter was still the cutest. Little fatty was too much of a bastard. "Sister-in-law, did Wei Xiaobei catch a cold?" Celestine's wife took the child and looked at him. "He's fine." Then, she put Wei Xiaobei down. Wei Xiaobei, who had regained his freedom, crawled towards the sofa where Air Mao and Jingtan were sitting. "I heard that he can call mom and dad now?" Air Mao asked. "Yes, but I'm not too sure." Celestine's wife smiled. In the same neighborhood, there was a child who could call out when he was 10 months old. Although Celestine did not say anything, Celestine felt very unhappy when he saw that family being cocky in front of them. However, this could not be rushed. Different children had different situations. Last week, when he heard Wei Xiaobei speak, Celestine was so happy that he did not sleep until the middle of the night. "Come, call him Brother He." Celestine's wife carried Wei Xiaobei and placed him on her lap. She then faced Jingtan's direction and said. After knowing that Wei Xiaobei called Jingtan Brother He, Celestine's wife also told Wei Xiaobei to call him Brother He every time she saw Jingtan. However, Wei Xiaobei did not know how to say it before and had never called him that before. Wei Xiaobei looked at Jingtan and after his mother guided him a few times, he called out, "Pa." He did not say it clearly, but he could hear the meaning behind it. On the other hand, Air Mao made Wei Xiaobei call him second uncle again. Wei Xiaobei's response was, "Pft." This angered Air Mao to the point that he complained about the difference in treatment. Celestine came back early in the afternoon. He did not have to work overtime today. When he came back, he hugged Wei Xiaobei and called him a few times before chatting with Air Mao. "Here." Air Mao threw something to Celestine. Celestine took it and looked at it. It was a red braided bracelet. It was very simple and did not have any gold, silver, jade, or anything like that. "Isn't it your zodiac year? I took one from my great aunt and gave it to you. She has a lot of these things." Hearing Air Mao's words, Jingtan thought about the bracelet in Aunt Li's hands. The 2 braided bracelets looked similar, but Celestine's bracelet should be a man's bracelet. The knot on the string was a bit different from Aunt Li's bracelet. Even without any gold ornaments, it looked a bit more rigid. Celestine originally did not take it to heart, but when he thought about what he heard from Yi Hao about the boss of food flavor, he still wore it. Since it was just a small thing, it was not troublesome. It was just for psychological comfort, so wearing it was not bad. In the beginning, the 2 of them were talking about Wei Xiaopeng's first birthday and Air Mao's 100-day banquet. When they talked about their master, the 2 of them sighed. The old man was getting older and had accidentally fallen down a while ago. Even if he usually looked healthy, he was still old and was forced to stay in bed for a period of time by his disciples. This time, Celestine and Herr Mao did not want the old man to travel a long distance to come over. The old man had attended their wedding. Now, the old man could only look at the two of them through the pictures sent by the computer. However, Celestine thought that when they could go over to take a look, the master and his disciples could gather together. Now that the few of them were all fathers, the few of them who attended Herr Mao's wedding said that they would find a time to gather with the old man. After being separated for so many years, they did not meet up often. In the future, they would all be busier, and other things could not be said. I also know that. After the new year, I went over to take care of some matters. The old man's mental state was very good. However, I was thinking that when my heir Yuan is a bit older, we should bring him over to take a look. Right now, heir Yuan is still too young. Herr Mao said. And, when the time comes, I will bring little Fatty over as well. Oh, Master also said that if we go, we should bring Black Charcoal over to play with Dashin. Are we really bringing him? Celestine looked at Jingtan beside him and thought about Dashin's ferocious appearance. He felt that this was not a good idea. At the end of last year, when he went on a business trip to visit the old man, he saw Dashin biting a rabbit until his face was covered in blood. Jingtan was also pondering over the Dashin that Herr Mao and Celestine were talking about. He had long heard of Dashin's name, but he had never seen him before. He was too focused on his thoughts and did not notice. When Jingtan noticed, Wei Xiaopeng was leaning on the edge of the sofa, holding Jingtan's cat tail and putting it into his mouth. Chapter 333. Seeing Wei Xiaopeng grab the cat's tail, Herr Mao smiled and said, "If it was any other cat, it would have already scratched him. Senior brother Wei, you have to be more careful. My wife's relative's child is like this. He's already 3 years old and doesn't listen to anything. The parents won't always keep an eye on him." Once, the child ran to grab the cat's tail and was scratched by the cat. You know, children don't know the severity of the situation. The cat's reflexive claw immediately drew blood. If it wasn't for the fact that the child was wearing a lot of clothes, let alone his hand, his arm would have been scratched. Herr Mao said this while picking up the good news. This kind of thing happened quite often. Scratching the hand or arm was considered lucky, but scratching the face or eye would be troublesome. Celestine nodded. He did have to be careful. He had heard of this before, but the cats he was familiar with were all fine. They had never had this kind of problem, so he had overlooked it. Now that he thought about it, he really had to put more thought into it. He couldn't let his son develop this kind of habit. He had to know what he could and couldn't do. After all, not every cat was of Brother Black. They wouldn't tolerate it. Thinking of something, Herr Mao smiled proudly, but my 2 daughters get along quite well. The 2 daughters Herr Mao was referring to were his cat Black Rice and his daughter Herr Yuan. He even took out his phone to show Celestine a picture of the 2 daughters. It looked quite harmonious. With regards to Wei Xiaopeng's naughty behavior of grabbing the cat's tail, Jingtan decided to stay away from him before he turned 8. He wouldn't get close to the first birthday banquet either. After eating dinner at Celestine's house, Herr Mao first sent Jingtan back to the courtyard. On the way, he even said that he would let the cat's tail off during Wei Xiaopeng's first birthday banquet. Thinking about the scene, Herr Mao couldn't help but laugh. However, he was only joking. Nowadays, many children's first birthday banquets didn't do this. However, since Celestine wanted to do it, Herr Mao wouldn't go and cause trouble. If he really screwed Wei Xiaopeng over, he was afraid that Celestine would also screw him over during his daughter's first birthday banquet. Jingtan listened to Herr Mao's complaints and looked inside the car. Compared to when they went there were a few fewer gifts in Herr Mao's car. There was an extra box. The box was not tightly closed. Jingtan opened it and saw 2 pieces of woven fabric similar to the red rope he gave to Celestine. Was Herr Mao going to give these away? Black coal, don't destroy the red string. This thing costs $50 each. I've taken the last few today. I'll give them away when the time comes, Herr Mao said. 50 yuan? That old hag was really ruthless. Jingtan stared hard at the red rope woven fabric. There wasn't even a stone strung on it. Why was it so expensive? Hearing Mao's words, it seemed that there were quite a lot of people buying it. This old hag really knew how to swindle people. It was no wonder that before Mao found her, she had been living a good life in a small village without plowing or plowing. $50 wasn't a lot. To many people, it was just a small amount of money. However, when he thought about how the red rope looked like it could be bought at a stall for a few dollars, and then thought about the woven fabric that was tens of times more expensive, Jingtan couldn't help but silently curse the old hag for swindling people. However, at the same time, Jingtan also wondered if he should buy one as well. Little Pomelo was 12 years old this year. Many people in the same grade were older than her by a year or two. In addition, children didn't really care about the term natal year. Therefore, other than the Jiao Ma buying some red clothes for little Pomelo, Jingtan didn't see anything that deliberately targeted the term natal year. After all, among young people, although there were many who paid attention to this term, there weren't many. Back then, the Jiao Yuan didn't pay attention to this aspect. Jingtan had only heard about it from Jiao Ma. The Jiao Yuan didn't care at all. Things like wearing red underwear, the Jiao Yuan didn't do it. After Jingtan got home, he rummaged through the drawer where he kept his money. Most of the money he saved before the new year was wrapped in red packets and given out. After the new year, he worked overtime a few times and got some more. Xiao Guo was also generous now. He didn't give out 50 yuan a few times. Basically, he gave out 100 yuan. After rummaging through the money and making sure that he had enough money, Jingtan decided to go to the old lady's house to see if there were really a lot of people there like Mao said. This was the psychology of people. If everyone bought something, they would buy it too. On a good morning, Jingtan went to the lakeside villa area and lay down on a tree near the old lady's house. Although the old lady was always in a wheelchair and didn't usually run around, there were quite a lot of people who went to talk to her. Most of them were middle-aged women or elderly people. With Jingtan's hearing, he could hear the old lady's voice. Needless to say, the old woman did look like an expert when it came to tricking people. She tricked them into a daze. At least, from Jingtan's point of view, the old woman was tricking people. While she was fooling people, the old lady's hands were not idle. She was holding a red rope and weaving something. Even though she was getting on in years and her hands were trembling, her knitting was not slow. Jingtan was far away and could not see clearly, but by the time the old woman had finished chatting with someone, she was done. She put the finished product aside and continued knitting. And most of the people who came to chat with her would pay for one or two. Jingtan decided to stay in the afternoon and see how many people the old lady could fool. As for lunch at noon, Jingtan thought about it and decided not to go back to eat. It was troublesome to run around. If he was nearby, he could go to Feng Baijin's house for a meal. Aunt Li's cooking was not bad. Jingtan was planning to go to Feng Baijin's house for a meal when he saw two children about 10 years old running to the old lady's house like thieves. They were afraid of being seen by others. They should be primary school students who came home from school at noon. There was a primary school nearby. Many children in this community and some nearby communities went to school there. It was said that the quality of teaching was good. Naturally, some of the corresponding fees were more expensive. Although it was compulsory education, there were still many other expenses. The two children were holding a bag of bowls in their hands. Those were the bowls they brought to school for breakfast. They would take them back to wash at noon. The little girl was dressed like a child in this villa area, and the little boy was shabbier. He should be from a nearby community. Seeing the behavior of the two children, Jingtan was not in a hurry to go down the tree for a meal. He continued to stay here to see what the two children were going to do. Generally, people who went to the old lady either wanted to talk about the 5 elements of feng shui or wanted to buy a red rope out of admiration. These two children shouldn't be the former. As for the latter, these two children wouldn't be looking for a scam, right? It was 50 yuan for a red rope. At this time, no one was there to chat with the old lady. Everyone had to go back to prepare lunch. The old lady had someone to take care of her, so she didn't have to do it herself. She was still in the yard knitting the red rope. The three-legged cat was lying at the side, guarding the finished products. Granny Yang. The little girl stood at the gate of the yard and shouted politely. Zheng Tan heard from Er Mao that the old lady's surname seemed to be Ouyang, but he didn't know when it became Yang. Er Mao also said that Ouyang, and Yang had the same surname. Zheng Tan wasn't interested and didn't listen much. However, thinking back, the jade token had the word Ouyang on it. At that time, Zheng Tan only recognized the word Yang. Oh, little Nini. The old lady looked at the little girl standing at the gate and smiled. Her face was full of wrinkles and her eyes were squinted. Granny Yang, I brought my classmate here to buy a bracelet. No, buy. The little girl didn't know what it was. She pulled the little boy forward and said, You can say it. The little boy was a little embarrassed and nervous. However, as the old lady asked some seemingly random questions, the little boy relaxed and answered them one by one. Zheng Tan listened to their conversation and understood that the little boy wasn't buying it for a person, but for a cat. No one in his family was in the zodiac year this year, but the old cat at home was already 12 years old. It was even older than the little boy. The old lady didn't look very surprised. She was still smiling and kind to children. She listened to the little boy talk about the cat at home. At the same time, her hands didn't stop and she was finishing knitting. Granny Yang, can you buy it? After saying that, the little boy asked with a red face. In many people's eyes, his behavior was a wastrel, doing useless work and foolishly looking for trouble. Could a cat be the same as a human? According to the conversion of the age of a cat and a human, many people said that a 7 or 8-year-old cat was equivalent to a human's 50 years old. For example, the 12-year-old cat at home was equivalent to a human's 60 years old or 70 years old. It was a real old cat. Of course. The old lady handed over the knitted item in her hand. The little girl came over to take a look. Hey, it's different from the one I saw last time. To make sure, she looked at the bracelets in the box next to her. This one was indeed different from the others. The old lady just smiled and didn't answer. The little boy carefully put the red knitted item in his hand into his pocket. Then, he took out a plastic box of candy from the bag that held the bowl. There was some change in the box. There weren't any 5 or 10 yuan notes, but there were a lot of 1.5 yuan notes. There were also some 10 yuan coins. After counting the money with a red face, the little boy said embarrassedly, Granny Yang, you don't mind this, right? It's okay. Just leave it here, the old lady said casually. When leaving, the little boy turned back to look at the old lady. Granny Yang, I heard that the natal year is a hurdle. Will it pass this hurdle? Do you want it to pass this hurdle? The old lady asked. Of course. I heard that there was a cat in the north of the city that lived until it was over 20 years old. The little boy said excitedly. That's good. The little boy was a little confused, but he soon smiled and waved to the old lady. We're leaving. Thank you, Granny Yang. The two children left the old lady's yard and whispered as they walked. Zheng Tan was curious and wanted to see what the old cat looked like. I'll pay you back the 20 yuan as soon as I have the money, the little boy said. This was urgent. The pocket money that he had saved for so long was only 30 yuan. It was not enough for 50 yuan. Don't worry about it. You don't have much pocket money. Besides, I don't need it. Most of the children living in this villa area came from well-off families. The more generous parents would give more. Many elementary school children who played games were rich. Next week. I should be able to pay you back the next week, the little boy said with certainty. He thought of an idea. Let's not talk about this first. How's your cat now? The little girl asked. It's good. I heard that when a cat gets old, its teeth will fall out. But when I opened it yesterday, my cat didn't lose a single tooth. It has a good appetite. But when I saw it last week, it looked listless. It didn't even jump when I teased it with a wool rope. It looked so lazy. Chapter 334. When they left the neighborhood, there was only the little boy. The little girl lived there, but now she had returned home. Jingtan followed the little boy not far behind. After leaving the lakeside villa area, they walked along the main road and turned a corner. There was a neighborhood that had been built 10 years ago, and the child's family lived there. It was Jingtan's first time here. Compared to some of the neighborhoods on the old street, there was not much difference. Perhaps the neighborhoods that had been built back then were all similar. The child's family lived on the second floor. Before entering the building, he could see a yellow and white cat squatting on the second floor windowsill. This should be the 12-year-old cat. Compared to Huang and the sheriff, the cat's eyes revealed a calmer emotion. It was unclear whether it was because of its age or because of its personality. The child looked at the cat on the second floor, smiled, and waved at it before entering the building. In the past, his cat could easily jump down from the second floor. It could not be locked up, but now it could not. It spent most of its time at home. At most, it would lie on the windowsill to bask in the sun and look outside. Jingtan did not follow. Seeing that the cat on the second floor had returned to the house after the child entered the building, Jingtan decided to jump to the second floor to take a look. After all, he was just a cat now, not a person. No one would think that he was a thief. This kind of old neighborhood was easy to climb. Plus, many residents like to install a shelter at the window to block the rain and the air conditioning from upstairs. After climbing to the second floor windowsill, Jingtan did not enter. Instead, he squatted on the windowsill. The area of the house was not big. It was about the size of a Jiao family. However, it had 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. Perhaps the old neighborhood liked to design the bedrooms to be bigger, so the living room was much smaller. This room did not have a balcony. Looking at the picture on the bedside table, it should be the child's parents' room. The door was not closed. From the windowsill, Jingtan could see the situation at the door. The old cat was squatting half a step away from the door. When it heard the familiar footsteps, its tail slowly wagged as it looked at the gap below the door. After the sound of the security door opening, there was no sound of the wooden door opening immediately. Below the door, a long green blade of grass stretched out from the crack. This was what the child had pulled from a flower bed in the community when he came back. Jingtan was puzzled when he saw this. Why was the child pulling grass? Jingtan had only thought that children of this age had bad hands and always wanted to play with something. Now, it seemed that this was not the case. Moreover, looking at the interaction between the two, this kind of situation should have happened more than once. Perhaps it had already been going on for a few years. Tomcat looked at the swaying grass and reached out its paw to grab it. If it were Huang and the rest, they would have already jumped left and right, scratched here and there like crazy people. Even the slightest movement would cause them to act as if they had discovered a new continent. The cat did not jump left or right. Perhaps it was just as the child had said, it could not jump anymore. It did not jump as much as a young cat. Although it didn't jump much, the speed of its claws was still quite fast. After pulling the grass into the house, Tomcat bit it twice and ignored the grass nailed to its paws. It continued staring at the door. This time, it did not stare at the crack of the door. Instead, it stared at the door lock. The wooden door opened, and the child walked into the house. He threw the bowl in his hand to the side and picked up Tomcat to pat its fur before putting it down. The parents were not home, and the child's grandmother was resting in the room. The large room was divided into 2. One was for the grandmother, and the other was for the child. On the dining table in the living room were cooked dishes. They were still warm, and the rice was in the rice cooker. Without eating, the child took out the red rope knitted fabric from his pocket and put it on his cat. After being put on the collar, Tomcat was not used to it. It rubbed against the corner of the table twice, but it quickly gave in under the child's comfort and stopped rubbing. The child scratched Tomcat's chin and whispered, "Don't run around. Don't fall like last time." It's not good to fall at your age. You're not young anymore, do you know that? As for the red rope, he did not plan to tell his family the truth. If they asked, he would say that he bought it for $2. If his family found out that he spent $50 to buy something that did not even have a stone as an accessory for a cat, he would definitely be scolded. His small pocket money would also be deducted. He did not know much about the zodiac year. He only heard Nini mention that people in her neighborhood bought red ropes. He also thought about the older cat upstairs and decided to buy one. He did not necessarily believe in those things. Perhaps he was just looking for psychological comfort. While the child was eating, Tomcat seemed to want to jump onto the high stool next to the child. When it reached the stool, it looked at the stool as if it was measuring the height of the stool. It took a lot of effort to jump, but it was not as nimble as Huang and the rest. Perhaps people could not see the difference, but Jingtan knew the movements of cats, so he could see the difference. The child picked up a piece of chicken, rolled it in the bowl, and removed the oil and heavy sauce outside the chicken. Then he picked it up and gave it to the cat on the stool next to him. Looking at the cat eating the meat, Jingtan felt that although the cat looked old, it would not deteriorate quickly. It was just that she did not know how long it could live. After all, most cats only had a lifespan of about 10 years, and some had even shorter lifespans. When the child turned his head, he found that there was a black cat on the windowsill of his parents' room. However, when he walked over, the black cat had already jumped down from the windowsill. After Jingtan landed, he looked at the window on the second floor. He walked to the flower bed next to the building and squatted there. He planned to stay there for a while. He took a nap. When he woke up, it was about 1:30 in the afternoon. Jingtan woke up after hearing the voices of the two children. They should be children from the same neighborhood. They came to find the child on the second floor to go to school together. "Hey, Wang Xing, your cat is on the windowsill sending you off again," one of the children said. "Right, how is the cat upstairs?" "It's not good. I heard from my dad that the cat upstairs is already 17 years old. It's 5 years older than my cat. Last month, when it was playing with Furball, it twitched and fell to the ground. Its legs and feet are a little stiff. It used to be so fat, but now it's only 2 or 3 pounds. Yesterday, when I went upstairs, I saw the auntie feeding it water with a needle. It can't even drink water by itself." Wang Xing did not want to talk about this, so he changed the topic and said, "Are you going over there this week?" The other two children obviously knew what Wang Xing meant by there. They nodded. "Of course. Are you going too?" "Yes. Call me if you want to go." "Okay, but don't tell your family." "Of course. I'm afraid that my parents will find out." After leaving the neighborhood, Jingtan did not follow the three children. He was hungry, so he decided to go home and eat something first. Jingtan saw the child named Wang Xing again on Saturday. In the morning, he went out with the Jiaopa. The Jiaopa went to the courtyard, and Jingtan ran around the school. Exercising was a must. When he saw the three children, they were holding a plastic bag in their hands. The bag was already filled with empty bottles, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, and so on. They were talking about was Tsinghua University. The consumption of students in the university was huge, so there were a lot of empty bottles. Even though the weather was still cool, there were still many bottles. Jingtan followed them not far away, watching them pick out empty bottles from the trash can or the garbage dump. As they picked up the bottles, the three children talked to each other. It should be the first time that the child named Wang Xing did this. The other two children were telling him about their experiences. Other than the mineral water bottles, there were also cans. They talked about which were aluminum and which were iron, which were bought and which were not, which were expensive and which were cheap. It seemed that these two children had done this many times. Wang Xing dragged the bag. This bag was used by his grandmother to store mattresses. Later on, there were a few holes in it, but she could not bear to throw it away. She kept it in the corner of the junk pile. It had been 2 to 3 years, and when he dug it out, the bag was covered in dust. It did not matter if there were holes. Although there were many holes, they were not big. It was enough for him to store the bottles. In the morning, they were able to pick up a lot of bottles. Then, they would drag them to the scrap store to sell. A bag full of bottles could be sold for about 4 yuan after the price was calculated according to the different categories. What happened after they bought it? The two children took the money and went to the internet cafe. They decided to stay there for 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon. Zheng Tan was speechless. So, they picked up the bottles for this reason? But this was also considered as self-reliance. Wang Xing did not go. Although he also wanted to play computer games, he was still in debt. He made an appointment with the two children and took the bag himself to pick up the bottles. Zheng Tan had nothing to do today, so he followed the child to see how many bottles he would pick up. As they walked, they came to the back of the Institute of Biological Sciences. There was a big trash can there. Wang Xing saw a few bottles and wanted to go over. Unexpectedly, when he was about to touch them, his arm was pushed. He looked sideways and saw a black cat. Black cat again? Wang Xing frowned and did not intend to pay attention to it. He raised his hand to pick up the bottles again. This time, he was not stopped by the cat, but by someone. A cleaner who was in charge of cleaning here told Wang Xing that the things in here were very dangerous. He could not pick them up with his bare hands. The garbage here had to be specially treated and would not be mixed with ordinary garbage. Zheng Tan also knew this. It was because of this that he stopped Wang Xing when he was going to pick up the bottles. After the cleaner left, Wang Xing looked at the big trash cans and turned to Zheng Tan and said, "Thank you." He now somewhat understood the black cat's actions. At the back door, there was a person in a white lab coat dragging a big trash can out. Wang Xing planned to leave first. Since the bottles here were more dangerous, then he would change to another place. It was better not to get hurt just to pick up the bottles. Black charcoal. Wang Xing paused when he heard the voice. He didn't know who the person was calling, but he felt a little guilty for picking up bottles at someone else's place. He planned to leave quickly, but the person over there seemed to be shouting in his direction. Zheng Tan looked at the person and sighed in his heart. It could not be helped. He would meet acquaintances wherever he went. The person who dragged the trash can out was one of Jiao Pa's students, the big guy Su Chu. He was now the second in Jiao Pa. After Exian graduated and went abroad this year, he would be promoted to a senior. However, his personality did not change much. For people like him who had a master's degree and doctorate for a few years, their personality would not change much. Compared to people of the same age who had entered society earlier, their personalities were still much simpler. "Hey, who is this child?" Su Chu looked at the child next to Zheng Tan and asked. Chapter 335. Today, it was Su Chu's turn to be on duty in the lab. The trash can in the lab was full, so he pulled it out. He didn't expect to see the boss's cat when he came out of the back door. The master's students under Professor Jiao all knew that the boss's cat had a high status. "Don't look down on it, or you'll suffer." Su Chu, who had received a favor before entering the lab, was really grateful to the cat. After a few years, they had become very close. However, Su Chu had never seen the kid standing next to the cat. He didn't look like a relative of the boss. As for the snakeskin bag, Su Chu was tall, so he could see the empty bottles in the bag after a few steps. He immediately understood what the kid was doing. Seeing that the kid was about to leave, Su Chu quickly said, "Hey, don't go. I still have a lot of bottles. Do you want them?" Wang Xing, who had just taken a step, stopped again. He was too embarrassed to speak. However, Su Chu didn't wait for him to speak. He put the trash can down and said, "Wait a minute." Then he ran into the building. Wang Xing stood there and looked at the person running into the building. He then looked at the black cat next to him and whispered, "Hey, black cat, is that someone you know?" Zheng Tan waited on the side. He once saw a study room outside the window. There were many students who pushed their drink bottles and mineral water bottles in the corner. They didn't necessarily want to sell them for money. Those who drank often didn't lack money. They were just lazy and would throw them away when they accumulated more. Su Chu came out quickly. Behind Su Chu were a man and a woman. They didn't wear white lab coats. They probably came out from other study rooms after hearing Su Chu's words. The three of them were either holding or hugging a pile of bottles. Some were plastic, and some were aluminum. Some students weren't used to the boiled water here. They found it smelly and often drank purified water or vitamin drinks. Therefore, there were many bottles of this kind. The three of them put the bottles in the snakeskin bag. They didn't let Wang Xing do it himself. Wang Xing stood awkwardly on the side. He didn't know what to say. He just blushed and said thank you. A student that Zheng Tan didn't know helped Wang Xing organize the things while giving him advice. Little brother, let me tell you something. You probably won't be able to find these aluminum cans in the Hua Institute. There are people there who are doing research on recycling precious metals. You won't be able to find any aluminum cans there, so you don't have to go there. There may be a few places where there may be a lot, but don't go to the old student dormitory area. The area there has been completely divided by several building managers. A kid like you will probably be at a disadvantage if you go there. Also, there are several waste collection places in our school, but the boss of one of them is better. You can sell it for more money. You can go to the small hardware store at the school gate and buy a pair of ordinary cotton gloves that cost 1 yuan. It's safer that way. When Zheng Tan heard, I'm telling you, he knew that there would be a lot of things to say. This person was really long-winded. However, he said it in detail. Wang Xing also listened very carefully. Understanding more could save a lot of time and improve efficiency. This person said that he also did this kind of thing when he was an undergraduate. Although the word waste collection was embarrassing, it could sell a lot of money in a day. In the past, he picked up things with his classmates for novelty. The people in the dormitory added a week's worth of meals. Later, he stopped because of his studies. Just like the Environmental Protection Association, there are people who openly ride a 3-wheeled motorcycle in the name of environmental protection and wander around the school all day long to pick up things. I heard that someone used the money from the waste collection to buy a small electric car. That arrogant look, in addition to giving Wang Xing advice, they also told Wang Xing that the trash cans in some places shouldn't be rummaged through. Just like the trash cans in their courtyard, there may be more harmful substances in them. Although toxic and dangerous things wouldn't be thrown here, even if it was just a very ordinary empty bottle, you wouldn't know what was in the bottle, whether it was thrown away by someone, whether there were drug residues in the bottle, and whether there would be other harm. Generally, the trash cans here wouldn't be left for too long. Soon, someone would come and take them away. The cleaner auntie just dragged away one, and now she came again. She put down the empty trash cans and dragged away the full ones. Thank you, brother and sister. Wang Xing looked at the bag full of bottles and said, Io, what are you thanking us for? Little brother, when will you come again? We will keep them for you. Sai, if you come over during the summer, there will be more. We don't have summer holidays here. If you want, you can come over during the summer. The woman said. In the school, many children directly called them uncle and auntie. It was rare to hear them call them brother and sister. His mood suddenly became better. After Su Chu and the others entered the building, Wang Xing dragged the bag full of bottles and went to another place that sold waste that the person told him just now. He picked up some more along the way. At the place where he and his classmates went before, not only did the person who collected the waste reduce the price, but he was also very precise. Therefore, Wang Xing decided to try another place. Just like what the graduate student said, although the place that collected the waste was a little far, it was only a little far. This time, Wang Xing sold a lot, so the price was a little higher. He also had more money. The person even rounded it up. Originally it was 560 yuan, but he directly gave Wang Xing 6 yuan. Wang Xing carefully put the money into his inner pocket. He was thinking about whether he should change to a bigger bag tomorrow. They were all empty bottles, and they were not heavy. He also had the strength to carry them. With experience, it was easy. The first time he was unfamiliar, the second time he was familiar with it. In addition, there were people who gave him advice, so his efficiency also increased. Wang Xing went 3 times in the afternoon. Adding the money he sold in the morning, he made a total of 23 yuan. For Wang Xing, 20 yuan was a lot. He saved for 2 months and only managed to save 30 yuan. Today, he sold more than 20 yuan, which was enough to pay off his debt. He would continue tomorrow on Sunday. If he could come over every weekend, he would not need to pay for his living expenses. He could also buy some things for his family. As long as he could put down his pride. Seeing that it was almost time, Wang Xing went to the internet cafe to find his classmates and then went back together. After that, as long as there was no heavy rain, Jing Tan could basically see Wang Xing's figure on campus every weekend. Jing Tan went to Wang Xing's neighborhood several times. Every time he went, the old cat would squat by the window sill on the 2nd floor of the building. Whether it could get some sun or not, it would always squat there with a red rope around its neck and squint its eyes. When it saw Jing Tan, the cat only opened its squinted eyes a little and looked down at Jing Tan, who was standing downstairs. Cats always like to squat at high places and look down, whether it was a kitten or an old cat. According to Wang Xing, this old cat was a popular character in this area when it was young. However, Wang Xing did not remember much at that time. Some of it was what he heard from his parents, and some of it he remembered. When Wang Xing was very young, he got into a fight with a kid who was 1 year older than him in the community. His cat even went to help him and scratched the kid. Wang Xing's parents came to his house with gifts to apologize, and they even paid for the injection. Because of this, Wang Xing's parents almost sent the cat away, saying that it scratched people. If Wang Xing had not cried and rolled on the ground and refused to let them send the cat away, perhaps he would not have seen the old cat now. For many children, going home after school was a very happy thing. Other than not having to sit in the classroom and be restrained, they were also thinking about cartoons and TV series. Wang Xing's happiest thing when he went home every day was to pull a weed and squat in front of his house to play with the cat on the other side of the door. In the summer, he would also catch some small insects like grasshoppers for his cat to play with. People who did not have a cat could not understand the feelings of people who had lived with cats for a few years, or even 10 or 20 years. Wang Xing was willing to spend a large amount of money to buy a cat some hope that he did not know whether it was real or not. Looking at the old cat on the window sill, Jing Tan turned around and left. The old cat on the window sill opened its eyes a little. The sun was too strong for it to open its eyes. It squinted and looked at the black cat who was walking further and further away. It yawned and raised its paws to lick them. It did not care if the paws were still sharp or if it could still fight, but it still licked seriously. It was a habit, a natural instinct, or perhaps other emotions. Then, it calmly looked at the neighborhood that it could not be more familiar with. The azaleas were blooming, and the sun was still shining. After hesitating for a while, Jing Tan found some time and went to the old woman with the money in his vest. He did not buy a bracelet. The old woman introduced him to a waist chain with some small stones on it. He did not know what material it was made of. Jing Tan did not know much about it and had never studied it before, but it looked quite beautiful. However, when the old woman offered a price of 1,000, Jing Tan could not help but shake his beard twice. Jing Tan's private stash of money that he had saved up in his drawer was just 1,000 yuan. This old woman had really pinched it well. In the end, Jing Tan gritted his teeth and bought it. His private stash was basically emptied. If this was the old Jing Tan who spent money extravagantly, he would have made more than this in a day of picking up girls. However, Jing Tan's situation was different now. It was not convenient for him to withdraw money from his card, so he could only earn overtime. Hopefully, I can work more overtime next month. Jing Tan thought to himself. The old woman made the waist chain at the last minute. Jing Tan squatted at the side and watched, closely observing how the old woman used her trembling hands to quickly make complicated knots. The knots were not all the same. Jingtan did not know what pattern was used to weave the chain. Anyway, as she looked at it, she could not figure it out. A third of the chain was finished. She looked at it again, and then it was finished. The old woman took out the money from Jingtan's vest and put it into the box of money without counting it. Then, she put the waist chain in a small cloth bag and put it into Jingtan's vest pocket. Her old face was full of wrinkles from smiling. When he saw little Pomelo happily put on the waist chain, Jingtan suddenly felt less distressed about the money. He hoped that little Pomelo would not be as unlucky as Boss Kai. Speaking of Boss Kai, who could be attacked even when he was lying down, he was in a good mood recently. He launched 2 new dishes, and the restaurant was still very popular. He also took the time to take his wife and children from Nanching to travel around. Jingtan had not seen Boss Kai for a few days in a row. However, although Boss Kai was not there, he had told the manager that when Jingtan came over, he only needed to wait in Boss Kai's lounge and he would be able to eat soon. Jingtan suddenly felt a little guilty about stretching out his arms and opening his mouth to eat. However, that was only a momentary feeling. He still enjoyed what he should enjoy. Since he had been forced to become a cat, why couldn't he enjoy some special treatment? On this day, when Jingtan went to eat, he met an acquaintance again. Lu Ba and Jean Gui. Chapter 336. Some time ago, Lu Ba had been busy with something outside and was not in Chuhua City at all. As for the number 46 that he had been paying attention to, every time he called, the phone was turned off. This made Lu Ba think that the person had directly abandoned the number. He even added 200 yuan to the number. Unfortunately, there was no news from the other party until now. Jingtan did not know that someone had added money to his number. He did not turn on his phone now. Except for the novelty of holding the phone in the beginning, he was bored later. He could not call others to chat. What would he say if he called? How? There were only so many people he knew. Moreover, he could not talk, so he put his phone there temporarily. When Jingtan saw Lu Ba, he had just finished eating and jumped out of the window of Boss Kai's lounge. Lu Ba happened to see him. "Hey, the cat is stealing food!" Lu Ba shouted at Jingtan. "Jingtan! Steal your sister. Do I need to steal food here?" After glancing at Lu Ba, Jingtan planned to ignore him and leave directly. He did not expect that Lu Ba would follow him. After Lu Ba went out and returned to Chuhua City, he was dragged by Jean Gui to eat food. Jean Gui liked food very much. He had recommended it to Lu Ba several times. It was rare for new dishes to be served, so he dragged Lu Ba here. They had just finished eating and planned to go back to Jean Gui's place. However, they did not expect to meet Jingtan. Lu Ba changed his mind and decided to walk with Jingtan to digest the food. Anyway, he had nothing to do. He came to Chuhua City to have a good rest for a few days. He called that number again this morning, but it was still the same. The other party's phone was turned off. He did not know what to do. It was boring. Should he go to a bar and find a girl to spend the night with tonight? Jingtan did not intend to pay attention to the 2 people behind him. He did not deliberately walk fast. Why should he walk so fast when he was full? Why should he torment himself for the 2 people behind him? Out of sight, out of mind. He just ignored the 2 people behind him. However, after hearing what the golden turtle said to Liu Ba, Jingtan couldn't help but pay attention to their conversation. According to the golden turtle, Liu Ba was going to a small city in the northern part of Sichuan province at the beginning of next month. She had probably received another order. It was already April, and the next month would be May. At the beginning of May, Liu Ba would go to North Shu. Jingtan couldn't help but think of the natural disaster he had posted on the forum a few days ago when he secretly went online. Back then, Jingtan actually didn't pay much attention to the disaster and didn't know much about it. He only had a general idea. At that time, he was still a heartless fool, playing games and picking up girls crazily, wasting away his years in mediocrity. Now, he wanted to tell more people what he knew, but in less than a minute after he posted the post, his account was banned and deleted. The reason was that he was spreading rumors, destroying harmony, and was banned without discussion. Well, Jingtan didn't know what to do now. If he was a human, it would be a little easier. However, he was now a cat, and his means were limited. Among the people he knew, it seemed that no one would go there. Jingtan had been struggling for several nights. However, now that he heard that Liuba was going to North Shu, Jingtan had an idea. If he couldn't do it himself, he could ask others for help. He just didn't know if Liuba would believe him. After returning to Tsinghua University, Jingtan rarely checked his phone. It was turned off and had no battery, so he had to charge it. The good thing was that the quality of the phone was good. After leaving it here for so long, it was still in good condition after charging it. There were many messages and prompts. Jingtan looked at them one by one and deleted them one by one. He found that there was a message to charge the phone, which surprised Jingtan. Looking at the message behind Liuba, although it didn't say clearly, Jingtan could guess that it was Liuba who helped to charge the phone. Jingtan didn't contact Liuba immediately. Instead, he sent a message to Liuba a week later, asking if he would change his account number next month. Liuba, who was watching Animal World and yawning in boredom on the sofa, immediately became energetic when he saw the familiar number. He dialed it directly. As usual, the other party refused to answer. However, after reading the message, Liuba replied seriously. He would still use this account next month. At the same time, he gave Liuba another number. If Liuba couldn't get through with this account, he could call another one. There was always one who could. Jingtan asked Liuba whether he would go on a long trip next month. After a while, Liuba replied. He only said that he would go on a long trip, but didn't say where he would go. He couldn't tell Liuba many things related to business as he did with Jean Gue. After getting the information he wanted, Jingtan directly turned off his phone. Liuba made several calls in succession. Listening to the familiar prompts, he put down the phone and wondered what the other party meant. He always felt that the other party seemed to want to tell him something very important. Liuba always kept this matter in mind. On the day he left Tsinghua City, he called that number again, but the other party's phone was turned off. Therefore, he sent a message saying that he would leave Tsinghua City today. Jingtan looked at the wall calendar in the living room at home and counted the time. He turned on his phone almost every day. The time was not fixed. Sometimes it was morning, sometimes it was night. Because of this, he didn't meet Liuba. Therefore, when he called, the phone was turned off. After seeing Liuba's message, Jingtan didn't reply. If he replied now, the other party would definitely start to call him again. There was still a week before the date that Jingtan circled. Jingtan thought that Liuba's situation should be stable and he could talk about it. Therefore, after dinner, he slipped out and went to the old tile-roofed housing area. At this time of night, the old tile-roofed housing area was always very quiet. This could save Jingtan a lot of trouble. If there were other noises, Jingtan was afraid that Liuba would guess the specific location based on the sound. After turning on his phone, he read a few messages. Liuba was probably busy during the mission period, so there were fewer messages. They were all unimportant messages. All of them were asking Jingtan what he wanted to talk about. After deleting them, Jingtan wrote a message asking Liuba what she was doing at the moment. He couldn't just call her directly. If he messed up Liuba's mission, Jingtan was worried that Liuba wouldn't cooperate. However, Liuba quickly replied, taking a dump. Jingtan didn't know what to say. At this moment, in a relatively good hotel in a small city in the northern part of Sichuan, Liuba was having dinner with someone. Halfway through, he left to go to the bathroom. He drained the water and smoked to relax. There were too many people coming and going, so he simply found a room and closed the door to sit on the toilet seat. No one would disturb him, so it was convenient for him to think about things and wait for time. A man and a woman had just entered the room next to his. They drank too much but were in high spirits. They were having sex in the next room and didn't care whether it was a men's room or a women's room. Flirtatious sounds were incessant. There were a few people who came to the bathroom. Even though they couldn't see the situation inside, they still whistled obscenely. Liuba planned to squat inside and eavesdrop for a while. Anyway, the group of people in the private room over there were drunk. He waited until they were almost drunk before going back. He didn't expect to receive that message at this time. Lu Ba was the one who replied to the text message Jing Tan received while sitting on the toilet seat. After thinking for a while, Jing Tan sent another message, "I have something to tell you." "Okay, I'm all ears." Sitting on the toilet seat, Liu Ba took out a very small earphone from his pocket and put it on. It isolated the noise outside so that he could better hear the voice from the phone when he made a call. Just as Liu Ba was about to dial, a phone call came in. Liu Ba raised his eyebrows. It was rare. This mysterious guy actually took the initiative to call. Did he have something to ask for help? Thinking quickly, Liu Ba pressed the answer button and listened attentively to the voice in the earphone. However, after waiting for a while, he found that there was no response from the other side. When the call was just connected, Jing Tan almost spat out the dinner he had just eaten. He listened to some sounds on the other side of the phone and didn't say anything for a long time. He could imagine what the situation was on the other side. He deeply doubted whether Liu Ba was seriously taking a dump or watching something that was not suitable for children. After Liu Ba said hello twice, Jing Tan continued to do what he wanted to do. Jing Tan didn't send a message to tell her about it. Instead, he chose this way. Of course, he had his own considerations. Liu Ba wore the earphone. Although it was very noisy next door, the earphone could clearly hear the voice from the other side of the phone. At the same time, if the call involved confidential information, he could use the voice next door as a cover. He didn't need to be afraid of being heard by others. After all, they would pay attention to the other side of the phone. There was still no sound from the other side of the phone. Through the earphone, there was still a tapping sound. Liu Ba was prepared. When the call was connected, he took out a folded pen and a small piece of paper from his pocket. With the tapping sound from the earphone, a sentence appeared on the paper. It was written in pinyin. Looking at the sentence on the paper, Liu Ba spelled it 3 times. He wondered if he had spelled it wrong and misunderstood the meaning. The other side of the phone had hung up. After the call ended, he received a message. "Do you understand?" "I don't think I understand." Looking at the sentence on the paper, Liu Ba still found it hard to believe. Jing Tan didn't think that Liu Ba really didn't understand. It was normal for him to be suspicious when he first heard this kind of thing. "If you understand, tell as many people as possible." After Jing Tan sent this message, he directly turned off his phone. He chose Liu Ba to help him purely based on his intuition. He felt that Liu Ba could do things that he couldn't. Moreover, he wouldn't leak the secret and could even do things better. On the other hand, Liu Ba was in a rather complicated mood now. Rationally speaking, the credibility of this message wasn't high. After all, no one could predict the future, let alone this kind of message that made people shudder all over. If it was someone who didn't know anything, it would be fine. However, Liu Ba had experienced a lot of things, including natural and man-made disasters. It was because of this that he could deduce several results from this short sentence. Each result was quite tragic. Putting the earphone back into his pocket, Liu Ba sat on the toilet lid and looked at the piece of paper in his hand, lost in thought. The battle next door was still fierce, but Liu Ba turned a deaf ear to it. He didn't have time to think about other things now. Instead, he carefully analyzed the possibility of the message on the piece of paper being true, or was it a trick of the other party to fool him? When Liu Ba came back to his senses, the person next door had already left. There was no one else in the bathroom, and it was very quiet. The soundproofing effect here was very good, and the noise outside couldn't be heard. Liu Ba tore the piece of paper into pieces and flushed them away in the toilet. In the bathroom, a drunkard had smashed the light with his mobile phone. There was a broken mobile phone on the floor of the bathroom, and 2 of the lights on the ceiling were broken. It was much dimmer, and one of them was still flickering, adding a sense of strangeness. There was an open window in the bathroom, and the night wind blew in, making it a little cold. Chapter 337. Lu Ba did not know if the other party was telling the truth, but he would still do some things and tell some people. He would also be on guard. As for whether other people believed him or not, he could not control their thoughts. If he was not sure about something, there was no reason to force others to do it. Ever since that day, Lu Ba would call others whenever he was free for the next few days. He would call 4-6s, but unfortunately, the phone was turned off every time he called. Looking at the date displayed on the phone and the time mentioned by the other party, Lu Ba was anxious, which was rare. In the past, even if he accepted a very dangerous job, he would not be so anxious. Although he did not show it on his face and others could not see it, the feeling of not being able to vent it in his heart made Lu Ba almost go crazy. An earthquake with a magnitude of 8. Was this a joke? If it happened in Chuhua City, there would not be many buildings left standing. In Chuhua City, Jingtan still lived according to his daily habits. He looked the same as usual, but when he was alone at home, he would secretly turn on the computer and surf the internet. In fact, it was not considered secretly. Jingtan did not pay attention and left some clues behind. That day, the Jiaopa picked up a strand of cat hair from the keyboard and glanced at Jingtan. Then, he did not say anything else. There was no other unusual emotion on his face. This made Jingtan even more certain that the Jiaopa must have known something. The day was getting closer and closer. On that day, Jingtan did not go out. He stayed at home the whole day, opened the internet, and paid attention to a few websites. Jingtan did not pay attention to this matter at that time, so the time in his memory was not accurate. He only remembered a rough idea. Therefore, he stayed in front of the computer and waited. The information on the internet should be faster than the news on TV. Moreover, Chuhua City was not in the earthquake zone and was far from the epicenter. There should be no problem. This was also the reason why Jingtan stayed at home even though he knew that there would be an abnormality today. He went out for lunch at noon and came back to lie in front of the computer. After taking a short nap, he refreshed the internet after waking up. Just as Jingtan clicked the mouse, he suddenly felt a shake. They're here. Some people in the school sensed it and came out of the building. Some students who were doing experiments in the laboratory quickly ran out after sensing it. However, most people didn't notice it. Some people were sleeping in the dormitory, and some were paying attention to other things. They didn't realize what had happened at all. Jingtan refreshed the web page. There were not many reports yet. He wandered around the house and then ran out. When he came to the old tile-roofed housing area, he dialed Lu Ba's number. He couldn't get through. He called again, but he still couldn't get through. Jingtan thought about it. He had already told Liu Ba about what had happened. Yesterday, he had specially sent her a text message to remind her to remember what he had said that day. Liu Ba had also replied. She should have been prepared. But now, her phone could not be reached. It might not necessarily be Lu Ba who was in trouble. It might be a communication malfunction. That night, the newspapers, and the internet were all talking about the earthquake in northwest Sichuan that afternoon. Many students called their classmates, friends, and relatives over there, but they couldn't get through. There were many situations where the line was busy. Jingtan went out and called Lu Ba again, but he still couldn't get through. Perhaps Lu Ba was in a more remote place and not in a big city. If she was in a remote mountainous area near the epicenter of the earthquake, she would probably encounter a lot of trouble. That night, many people were destined to have a sleepless night. Jingtan didn't stay at home the next day. He ran to the old tile-roofed housing area, turned on his phone, and waited. He was eager to know about Lu Ba's situation, how many people had taken precautions, and how many people had survived because of it. While Jingtan was waiting, in a small town some distance away from the city in northern Sichuan, many of the original residential buildings had collapsed, and there was no road on the ground. Lu Ba sat on the ruins. There was nothing he could do. There were ruins everywhere. He hadn't closed his eyes since yesterday afternoon. At that time, the inspection team he was part of was inspecting a primary school. He spent some effort a day in advance to persuade the leader to have a school-wide meeting in the afternoon on the spacious playground. The playground was very big. When the earthquake happened, a part of the teaching building collapsed. Although there was chaos at that time, most of the building survived. As for Lu Ba himself, he had been helping with the rescue with a few people in the team. He only sat down to catch his breath now. If he didn't rest, he would probably fall down directly. His face was covered in dust, his head was dizzy, and his eyes were bloodshot. If this happened in the past, Lu Ba would never have thought that he would risk his life to save people. It was good enough that he could escape. But now, he didn't eat. He only drank a few mouthfuls of dirty water. He was in a sorry state as he followed a few people to save survivors from the ruins. There was a person in the team who seemed to be very timid. Lu Ba had always felt that this person was too weak and didn't look like a man. However, this person had been working with Lu Ba and the others since yesterday. His condition was worse than Lu Ba's. He almost fell down just now, so he was forced to rest. In this state, not only would he suffer, but he might also make mistakes when saving people. The aftershocks were still going on. Hero? Bear? Only when one really reached that point could one tell. Perhaps even the person himself didn't know how far he could go. Liu Ba pinched the corner of her eyes with her dusty and wounded hand. She fumbled in her pocket and took out a twisted cigarette. The lighter was gone, but there was a mini lighter on the key string. After lighting it up, Liu Ba took a puff of the cigarette. His hands, which used to be able to untie ropes when he was tied up, were shaking uncontrollably now. Lu Ba had always boasted that he could remain calm in the face of danger. But now, he knew that he had overestimated himself. He looked up at the sky. There was no sunlight, and the sky was overcast. He was reborn, but strangely, he didn't feel much joy. If only he could tell more people, but there was no if in the world. The tobacco softened the stiffness caused by fear and fatigue. It also gave him some strength. Not far ahead, the cracked ground was like a hole that was forcibly torn in people's hearts. They didn't know how many heart-wrenching cries they heard around them. In the face of cruel nature, human life was so fragile. It was gone in the blink of an eye. The greatness and ostentatiousness of the past were also so fragile. He took out his cell phone from his trouser pocket. At that time, all communications were cut off, so he couldn't make a call. He didn't use it. Later, when he was helping to save people, he fell and was almost smashed by the cement board above. Fortunately, the card should still be usable. Moreover, he still had a cell phone in his backpack. Now that communications had not been restored, he still couldn't use it. After smoking a cigarette, Lu Ba felt that he had some strength and his mind was much clearer. He got up and patted the dust off his body. He continued to help save people and carry out those who had already been killed. Zheng Tan received a call from Lu Ba on the third day of the earthquake. After Lu Ba could make calls, he received many calls and text messages from people. Lu Ba didn't have any relatives. Most of them were his friends and people he had reminded a few days ago. There weren't many people who could really be considered his friends. Jean Gui was one of them, and he was also one of the few people who knew about Lu Ba's whereabouts. "You're really still King alive." Jean Gui hadn't slept for the past 2 days. Every now and then, he would make a call and pay attention to relevant information on the internet. Now, he finally made the call. Lu Ba didn't say much to Jean Gui. Time was tight. After confirming that Lu Ba was still alive, Jean Gui's tense nerves relaxed. After giving some simple instructions, he went to sleep. In addition to Jean Gui, Lu Ba also received a few calls and quickly browsed through the information on his cell phone. Although he was young, he had received a lot of orders and knew some people in this province. There were people from all walks of life, and some of them even held high positions in the system. After the shock, fear, and grief, these people all called Lu Ba to ask about the situation. How did Lu Ba know about this? This was a natural disaster, not a man-made one. It was extremely difficult to be sure. If Lu Ba hadn't reminded them, they might have been buried under the ruins. Lu Ba ignored them for the time being. He changed his SIM card and installed the card in the broken cell phone. Then, he dialed Lu Ba's number. This time, he didn't turn off his cell phone. The call was quickly connected. Lu Ba took a deep breath and suddenly didn't know what to say. There was still an unchanged silence on the other end. The heavy silence lasted for nearly a minute. Then, Lu Ba spoke. His voice was a little hoarse. Who are you? There were too many questions, too many whys, and too many inconceivable things. In the end, he only asked this question. Lu Ba had asked this question many times, but he had never been so eager to know the other party's identity. The prophecy had come true. The doubts and suspicions he had when he sat on the toilet seat were now gone. If it hadn't been for the other party, he would have been buried under the ruins with the members of the investigation group. There might not have been so many survivors in that primary school. Who are you? Lu Ba asked again because of the other party's silence. Although his voice was not loud and sounded weak and tired, there was a sense of persistence in his voice. It seemed that if the other party didn't tell him, he would do his best to find out the result. There was another period of silence. Who are you? He asked for the third time. He enunciated each word clearly. The emotion contained in his words was even stronger than the previous one. Lu Ba thought that the other party still didn't intend to tell him after he asked for the third time. When the other party hung up the phone, there was a slight rustling sound on the other end of the phone. Lu Ba didn't have her earphones because they were broken yesterday. Therefore, she pressed the handset against her ear and focused all her attention on it. The tapping sound came from the handset. Lu Ba raised his hand and wrote letters on a cracked wooden board in front of him that was covered with a layer of dust. The skin of his fingers was a little dry. When he moved, the wound split open. Lu Ba seemed to be unaware of it and focused on writing the 5 translated letters on the wooden board. Ghost? 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 Before Lu Ba had time to think deeply, the beeping sound of the phone being hung up came from the handset. As soon as he hung up, he received another call. Lu Ba answered the call. At the same time, she wiped the dust on the wooden board with the palm that wasn't holding the phone. The 5 letters disappeared as well. F***CK. Lu Ba, are you okay? I was almost buried under my own house. F***CK, if you didn't remind me. Oh right, you. How did you know this? Who told you this? The person who could call out the name Lu Ba directly and in such a tone obviously had a good relationship with Lu Ba. God. Lu Ba took a deep breath and sighed softly. King Donkey? You can't be like this. Without waiting for the other party to say more, Lu Ba hung up the phone and turned it to silent mode. She looked at the post-disaster town in her field of vision and walked forward. Ghost? God? It didn't matter. Chapter 338. Because of this disaster, the whole country was filled with a heavy atmosphere. There were also students under the Jiao Pa who were from there. Although they were not in the disaster area, the Jiao Pa still gave the student a break and let the student go home first to have a look and feel at ease. Many departments in the school had organized donations, and there were more or less students in each department who were from there. Zheng Tan basically didn't go out now. Wherever he went, he could hear people discussing the earthquake. The headlines in the newspapers, the daily news, the school's morning broadcast, the campus's fundraising publicity, Zheng Tan didn't pay attention to it back then. Now that he had experienced it, he understood that the reality was much worse than he had imagined. Flipping through the web page, there was a post that recorded the photos taken by volunteers there. A child with a bandage on his forehead looked at the ruins in a daze. A man who was older than the Jiao Pa knelt on the ground and cried in a mess. During this period, Zheng Tan occasionally met Ah Jin, who had come out for a walk with sunglasses. According to him, they had originally planned to go to the disaster area immediately, but they had been persuaded by their agent. On one hand, it was dangerous. On the other hand, the first 72 hours should be left to the professional rescue team and experienced volunteers. Celebrities like them would not only not be of help, but might even bring a lot of trouble. Just like what some volunteers on the internet said, after they went to the disaster area with passion, they realized that they had no experience. Sometimes, they could not even be of use. Those who had seen a huge disaster rescue scene would feel that they were insignificant. However, they could learn and help as much as they could. A week later, many entertainment websites turned black and white to mourn the victims of the disaster. Xiaoguo's Pet Center's official website also turned black and white. At the same time, Xiaoguo hung a letter on the website's homepage. The content of the letter was that their studio would be closed for a month. In other words, there would be no new advertisements or videos for a month. Xiaoguo himself would also take some of his subordinates to the disaster area. This wasn't originally decided by Xiaoguo himself, but after all, he held an important position in the Green Wings Association, and the Green Wings Association had to send people over to provide disaster relief. They also had to bring some relief supplies over. Since the other associations had contributed, there was no reason for the Green Wings Association to ignore it. Speaking of this, the person who had originally arranged for this mission was not Xiaoguo. After all, Xiaoguo was really too busy. However, the person who had arranged for this mission found an excuse to reject it. That person had heard from some sources that the number of rescue workers who had been sacrificed was much higher than what was reported. Now that there were still aftershocks, it was still very dangerous. So he cancelled his original plan of using this incident to give himself more glory. After all, glory was not as important as his life. After Xiaoguo learned about it, he didn't say too much. He chatted with several senior managers for a while, then went back to take care of the pet center. The next day after the meeting, he took people to the disaster area. Zheng Tan browsed the pet center's official website every day, and there were many people's comments. There was a donation record next to the official website's homepage. Although it didn't show the names of real people, every donation was recorded. When the time came, all the money would be donated to the people in the disaster area. Many of the pet center's customers were nouveau riche. Previously, some people had donated through other channels, but they had donated a lot here. Among them, there were some familiar IDs that Zheng Tan could match. Zheng Tan used to dislike a few of them, thinking that they were bad-tempered and pretentious. But now, it seemed that this wasn't completely the case. From their comments, it could be seen that some of them had even volunteered and posted some photos. Armani had become F*King F*King. Zheng Tan also donated. He gave his card to Jiao Pa, and the others had their own trusted channels to donate. After the donation, Zheng Tan's savings directly shrank by half. The donation during the new year didn't account for a large proportion of his savings, but it was different this time. After putting the card returned by Jiao Pa back into the drawer and locking it, Zheng Tan thought that after this incident, he would have to work hard. While paying attention to the disaster relief, Zheng Tan also searched for some information. Now, many people on the internet posted that there were various signs before the earthquake, and some people had already made predictions. Others thought that it was nonsense. The two sides quarreled non-stop. In the end, someone couldn't stand it and attacked both sides. After such a thing had happened, wasn't it messy? If they had so much time to quarrel, they might as well do more practical things and help more people. All they did was stay on the internet and criticize people. Did they really think that they were some big shot? There were many such posts. Zheng Tan couldn't be sure which ones were true, which ones were made up, and which ones were influenced by him. In short, in the end, they were all mixed up by some people. If Lu Ba really told a lot of people that 1/5 of the situations mentioned in these posts were caused by Lu Ba, then it would be considered good, and it would save a lot of people. He just didn't know if someone would investigate further after the incident. In order to avoid those unexpected troubles, Zheng Tan decided not to turn on his mobile phone recently. Zheng Tan took out his SIM card and hid it. Because there was no mission at the pet center for nearly a month, and Xiaoguo and the others were not there, Zheng Tan didn't go there. However, Zheng Tan didn't go there. Instead, a phone call came in. Charlie called directly to Jiao Pa's mobile phone. Therefore, after dinner that day, Jiao Pa didn't go to the courtyard again. Instead, he took Jingtan to the pet center. The cats in the studio and the cats adopted by the pet center were not together. For example, the American Shorthair, Prince, who often filmed advertisements, had his cat nest in the studio. Xiaoguo did this to let them be more familiar with the atmosphere of the studio. After all, cats couldn't adapt well in unfamiliar places. After the studio was expanded and renovated, now the studio was like a cat playground. There were many cat ladders and aisles from the corners to the ceiling. As Xiaoguo said, cats also had tempers and emotions. When they were in a good mood, their eyes would be brighter when shooting. Now, Xiaoguo took people to the disaster area. According to the information he posted on the homepage of the official website, it would take at least half a month. It had only been a week, and he wouldn't be back so soon. Xiaoguo indeed didn't come back. When Jingtan entered the studio, there wasn't anyone there. Only Charlie and another staff member were there. The staff member had gone to the disaster area with Xiaoguo. He was accidentally injured during the aftershock, and his physical condition wasn't very good. Therefore, he was sent back by Xiaoguo. There were also a few people from the Green Wings Association with him. However, after returning to Chuhua City, they separated. He returned to the pet center, and Charlie went to pick him up. There was also a cat returning to the pet center with the staff member. It looked like it was 2 months old, and its fur was the same color as Huang. It was also an ordinary field cat, but this little yellow cat had lost its forelimbs. According to the staff member, it was injured in the earthquake. After it was rescued, it was amputated. Originally, it was thought that the kitten's immunity was poor, and after the accident and surgery, it would be difficult for it to survive. Unexpectedly, it really recovered. After the amputation, it caused inflammation and swelling. Although it had been treated for several days and the kitten had recovered, it still looked listless. Charlie and the staff member took turns to look after it every day. When it came to saving the cat, many of the people that Xiaoguo had brought with him were pulled over to help save the cat. Although most of them were veterinarians, they were more reliable than the young and inexperienced volunteers. They could really help with changing the medicine, simple treatment, and care. Except for major operations, they could really help with everything else. And this kitten was sent to the place where Xiaoguo and the others were resting by a volunteer. The cat was rescued by a search dog called Zai Zai. After Zai Zai picked up the kitten was immediately transferred to the hands of the volunteers. After all, the search and rescue dog still had a lot of work to do. As for how to deal with the kitten, not many people cared. Human life was the most important thing. The volunteers didn't know what to do. The kitten's 2 forelimbs were so badly injured that it looked like it was going to be crippled. They didn't know how the cat survived. The volunteers brought the kitten back and were scolded by the team leader. If they couldn't save the person, who would save the cat? Moreover, although some of them studied medicine, they weren't veterinarians and didn't have much experience. They only did simple treatment. However, after knowing that Xiaoguo and the others were there, they immediately sent the kitten over. One of Xiaoguo's veterinarians performed an amputation operation for the kitten. Fortunately, there were still some veterinary drugs and tools. Although the conditions were far less than when it was in the pet center and it was easy to get infected, that was all they could do. It was the kitten's luck to be able to survive. Speaking of which, there was actually no need for Jingtan's help. However, the kitten was also troubled after coming here because the kitten often meowed. Once it meowed, it caused a chain reaction. There was a cat here who also liked to meow, but it usually stopped meowing because the other cats didn't meow. It also meowed when it was filming an advertisement. It only got better after being beaten by Jingtan. Now the kitten was making more and more noise because of the kitten's meowing. Even the other cats here were anxious and couldn't be appeased. Charlie was wondering if cats also knew fear, and the fear was passed from the kitten to the other cats, leading to the current situation. He called Xiaoguo to report, but Xiaoguo didn't say much. He only asked Charlie to find Jingtan. They would stop meowing after he calmed them down. In fact, in the entire pet center, Jingtan wasn't the only one who could calm them down. There were also Li Yuanba and Peanut Candy. Li Yuanba? He had indeed calmed them down before, and the effect was good. This was also the reason why Xiao Guo let Li Yuanba stay here. It was a pity that Li Yuanba didn't care about anyone now. He didn't even give face to Xiao Guo. He stayed in Xiao Guo's lounge all day long. Now, he didn't even do the weekly routine physical examination. Previously, when Xiao Guo wanted to take Li Yuanba to the physical examination room by force, he almost used force on Xiao Guo. It was Xiao Guo's wife, Li Yuanba's real owner, Yanzi, who came to calm him down. Originally, they were worried that Li Yuanba's age was coming and he was beginning to age. However, after some observation, it didn't seem to be the case. Therefore, this matter was temporarily put aside. In addition, Yanzi had to take care of the children and couldn't run here every day. Xiao Guo went to the disaster area, so the people in the studio didn't dare to do anything to Li Yuanba. Peanut Candy? That would be even worse. Xiao Guo had tried it before, but the peanut candy was so rude to them that the cat that was beaten up was startled for a month and lost a lot of weight. Since then, Xiao Guo had stopped counting on the peanut candy to keep the cat in check. Therefore, there was the scene where Charlie called Jiao Pa and asked him to bring Jingtan over. Chapter 339. When Jingtan first met Li Yuanba, this guy was already pregnant with peanut candies. At that time, its owner, Swallow, had just found out that it was a female cat. Thinking of the possible situations, Jingtan decided that he shouldn't come to the pet center for the time being. Even if he was called over, he couldn't stay here for long, especially in Xiao Guo's lounge. During this time, he absolutely couldn't go in. If Jingtan was right, Xiao Guo would frame him for this matter, and it would be hard to explain himself unless he did a DNA test again. In the past, the Jiao Pa had done a DNA test for Jingtan. Considering that there was such a way to clarify himself, Jingtan wasn't too worried. At worst, he could ask the Jiao Pa to do it. As for whose baby it was, Jingtan thought of what he heard from Air Mao and Celestine when they went to Triumph 2 days before the 100-day celebration of Air Mao's daughter. Since March, Yi Hao would bring the Monseigneur with him when he came over. He didn't know if it was for safety reasons or for other reasons. If that was the case, this baby was probably the Monseigneur's baby again. He just didn't know what it would look like when it was born. Also, when did the Monseigneur and Li Yuanba meet? Did Yi Hao know? Shaking his head, he didn't continue to think about it. Now that the cats in the studio had settled down, Jingtan immediately went home with the Jiao Pa. Because the Jiao Pa didn't have much time, if something happened in the pet center, Charlie would come directly to pick up Jingtan. Every few days, when there was trouble in the studio, Charlie would come to pick up Jingtan. Although Charlie and the staff said that it was because of the kitten, Jingtan thought that Li Yuanba might also be involved. Perhaps, the Monseigneur had come quietly at some point. Jingtan was able to see how well the kitten had recovered after coming here a few more times. Just like what Charlie and the others had said, this kitten's vitality was too strong. Not only did it survive such a serious injury in the disaster, it was also in good spirits now. Although it had lost its forelimbs and jumped like a kangaroo when it walked, as long as it had vitality, it was a good sign. When Xiao Guo was free, he told Charlie and the others to take good care of the kitten. When the time came, they would make a special topic for the kitten. Not only could they collect more donations, but it would also be good for the reputation of the Green Wings Association and the Pet Center. The donations would be donated to the disaster area where the kitten was found. The donations would be used for the livelihood of the victims and the reconstruction of the disaster area. As for the kitten's name, it was given by Xiao Guo, Paparazzi. It was hard to imagine that a cat had a dog's name. Later, when Jingtan heard Charlie and the others' discussion, he knew why Xiao Guo had named the kitten. The search and rescue dog that saved the kitten was named Zai Zai. It was said that it came from a search and rescue dog family. Its father was a search and rescue dog with a lot of honors. Its name was King. The original name of Zai Zai was not Zai Zai, but Kzai, using the first letters of its father's name. Later, because the word Kzai involved some sensitive and prohibited things, it was changed to the current Zai Zai. The reason why Xiaogua gave the cat this name was that the cat was saved by a dog, and the dog's name was Zai Zai, so it was directly named Paparazzi. As for the name, it was fine as long as it was called. Listen, Paparazzi was so easy to say. Besides, even Swallow could name her cat, Li Yuanba, so it was not that strange to name this cat, Paparazzi. Even if the cats in the studio sometimes threw tantrums, they were relatively good-natured and were not very aggressive. They treated Paparazzi peacefully, and a few cats often licked Paparazzi's fur. A new special area was opened on the Pet Center's official website. It was about Paparazzi. From the time after the operation to the current situation, there was a description of the situation. Because of Paparazzi, many cat friends donated some money again, and some even came to the Pet Center to see it in person. From the day of the earthquake, the rest of May, until the whole of June, the heavy feeling had not subsided. Jean and the others had gone to the disaster area. Now, some celebrities had also gone there. Whether it was a show or if they were sincere, as long as they could help the disaster victims and the reconstruction of the disaster area, it would be fine. Xiaogua returned in mid-June. On the second day of his return, before he could recover from the emotions accumulated in the disaster area, Li Yuanba was born. Early in the morning, Xiaogua finished breakfast and walked into the lounge with a cup of tea. When he saw the situation on the sofa, he almost threw the cup out of his hand. Swallow heard the news and came over, full of guilt. She had been very busy for more than 2 months, especially in the past month, taking care of the children and worrying about Xiaogua. Although she had heard that Li Yuanba was a little strange before, she did not think in that direction and did not take care of it. Now that she knew the real reason for Li Yuanba's abnormality, she was distressed and kept asking if Li Yuanba had been hungry during this time. Xiaogua was also afraid that nutrition problems would affect the cats' bodies, but Li Yuanba did not cooperate with the inspection. It did not allow anyone except Xiaogua and Swallow to enter the door at all. Whenever someone entered the door, Li Yuanba would roar, and its eyes would make people's hair stand on end. Because Li Yuanba was much more low-key now, many people had forgotten that this cat was actually very fierce in the past. However, Xiaogua soon found that he and Swallow seemed to have worried for nothing. Some of the food he put in the lounge, and some of the food reserves in the studio, were missing. According to Charlie, the diced chicken in the fridge was missing from time to time, but they did not care at that time. Now it seemed that it had probably gone directly into Li Yuanba's stomach. Li Yuanba usually did not do things like rummaging, and no one knew that it had this ability. Maybe it did this kind of thing secretly, but it was not discovered. In the past, Jingtan also learned a few tricks from it to climb over the window. It could be seen that this hidden cat was actually very capable. Jingtan only knew about Li Yuanba's kittens on the day the studio started work. However, Xiaogua kept it a secret. Except for the people in the studio, some people in the pet store and clinic did not know about Li Yuanba's kittens. The people in the studio should have also been told by Xiaogua, so they did not disclose the news. This made Jingtan very confused. What kind of kittens were born that made Xiaogua keep it a secret? Looking at Xiaogua, who was sitting next to the camera, but his mind was not in the studio at all, Jingtan's curiosity in his heart deepened. At this moment, several people in the studio who had seen the kittens, including Charlie, were also wondering who the kittens were. They could not see any other characteristics of the kittens now. They had to wait until it grew up. As for the color of its fur. Thinking about the color of the kitten's fur, he glanced around the cats in the studio, but still had no clue. The proprietress, Swallow, said that it might not be a cat from the pet center. If it had that kind of inclination, it would not have waited until now. Li Yuanba also did not like those cats. Although cats may not talk about relationships like people, it was also true that there was only one peanut candy after a few years. Besides, there were quite a lot of male cats in the pet center, so the possibility of it being a cat was smaller. Finally, Charlie's eyes fell on Jingtan, which made Jingtan's beard tremble. F***ck, he was suspected again. However, Charlie thought of peanut candy. That was not right. Peanut candy had long hair, and its body shape did not match with Jingtan's. If this kitten also had long hair and was big enough, tapping his forehead, Charlie thought about the long-haired cats around, especially the forest cats, but still could not think of anything. When it was almost noon, Swallow came over with a lunch box, which contained the cat food she had made for Li Yuanba. Xiaogua did not stay in the studio, and went to the lounge with Swallow. Zheng Tan took the opportunity to quickly follow them, wanting to see what the kittens looked like. Charlie and several other staff members who were eating lunch stretched their necks. They were not allowed to go close to the kittens. Peanut candy had not gone out to cause trouble for the past few days. It squatted not far from the lounge and looked over there. From time to time, it would go to the door and sniff the gap. It was not sure if it had realized that its brother or sister was inside. When other people came over, it would help Li Yuanba chase them away. Zheng Tan was still an exception. When Peanut Candy saw Zheng Tan, it did not show any intention of attacking him like it did when it saw other people or cats. As usual, it walked in front of Zheng Tan and rubbed against him, just like when Li Yuanba took it out for a walk. When Xiaogua and Swallow saw this, they originally planned to persuade Zheng Tan to leave, but now they did not say anything. They also wanted to see if Li Yuanba would chase Zheng Tan out. After the door opened, Peanut Candy stuck its head out and squeezed in with Zheng Tan, but it did not get close. It squatted by the door, stretched its neck, and looked curiously at the sofa. Zheng Tan walked in a few steps. Li Yuanba let out a warning sound, but it was only a warning sound. It did not show any strong vigilance or attack like it did when it saw other people. After stopping, Zheng Tan jumped onto a chair and stood up slightly to look at the sofa. The sofa had been surrounded by Xiaogua to prevent the kittens from falling out. The floor around the sofa was also covered with a thick blanket, just in case. The sofa cushions used by Li Yuanba were padded with cushions and other things. It was convenient for Li Yuanba to change and get used to it faster. At this moment, Li Yuanba was lying on its side on the sofa. In its stomach, there was a suspicious ball. What was that? Dragon fruit? Jiaoma had bought some dragon fruit in the past 2 days, so when Zheng Tan looked at the ball, he thought of the flesh of the dragon fruit. Of course, the spots on the ball were not as dense as the black seeds in the white flesh of the dragon fruit that Jiaoma had bought. Speaking of which, the fur pattern was most similar to that of the Dalmatian dog. Yes, the kitten in Li Yuanba's arms at this moment was very similar to that of a Dalmatian. Zheng Tan had seen many black and white cats, but it was the first time he had seen one with black spots like this. If it had yellow fur, it could be said that it looked like a leopard, but this one had white fur, so it was only black and white. It was all Xiaogua's fault for keeping the news a secret. He was afraid that some curious people would come over and disturb Li Yuanba. There were many rich and powerful people among Xiaogua's cat friends. Unfortunately, Xiaogua didn't sell the cat. If they were curious and insisted on coming over, Xiaogua's refusal would definitely offend them. Moreover, Yanzi had said that the cat wasn't for sale and that he would raise it himself, so Xiaogua decided to keep the news a secret. Just like the situation with Peanut Candy, Li Yuanba only gave birth to one kitten. This kitten was bigger than the average kitten. Yanzi and Xiaogua were discussing what to name the cat. Chapter 340. Maybe it was because Li Yuanba was too lazy to move, or maybe it had changed its way of educating children, or maybe it knew that this kitten's fur color could easily attract trouble. Anyway, Li Yuanba didn't take Little Sesame everywhere. Back then, Li Yuanba used to carry Peanut Candy everywhere. Now, Li Yuanba basically only stayed in Xiaogua's lounge and didn't run around. But Little Sesame was different. Just like Peanut Candy back then, Little Sesame grew very fast. It was obviously bigger than other cats of the same age, and this trend became more and more obvious as it grew. When it was a month old, this little guy showed its restless side. It ran around and was full of energy. Together with Paparazzi, they were the two most active cats in the studio this summer. Even Peanut Candy couldn't compare to them. Now, Xiaogua put a cat tree in the lounge. Sometimes, Li Yuanba was annoyed by Little Sesame, so it would jump to the top of the cat tree. Sometimes, it would lie on the sofa, but the sofa was too low. Even if Little Sesame couldn't climb up, it would still tease around. There was also a cat bed near the floor of the cat tree. That was where Little Sesame slept. Sometimes, Li Yuanba also slept there. Because of the mother and son in the lounge, Xiao Guo also changed the resting place. Otherwise, it would be impossible to rest peacefully here. Little Sesame was too restless. At the end of July, Jingtan was picked up by Charlie and brought to the pet center. Today was a routine working day. The temperature had already soared to 38 degrees Celsius. Outside, especially on the streets, the temperature was even higher. Car exhaust and air conditioning emissions made the temperature of the whole city jump a few more degrees. However, no matter how hot it was, it still had to work. Fortunately, there was air conditioning in the pet center, so Jingtan didn't have to worry about fainting from the heat. Speaking of which, the body temperature of cats was higher than that of humans. Relatively speaking, most cats were more resistant to heat. Among the cats in the studio, there were a few that liked to soak in baths. At this time, they were even happier. When other cats saw the water, they ran over happily. It was said that Sesame was also a cat that liked to soak in baths. One day, this little guy flipped into a basin of water. When a staff member went over to wash his face, he found a cat floating in the basin. The unique spotted fur color showed that this was the cat that the boss and lady boss treasured. At that time, the staff member was so scared that his face turned pale. After all, the basin was placed there. If this cat drowned in the basin, he didn't know how to explain it. He reached out his hand. Little Sesame raised his hand and pushed the staff member's hand. Little Sesame raised its head impatiently, then it moved its hand a few times in the basin, and continued to float in the basin. It was only a 1-month-old cat, and its immune system was weak. It had to pay special attention to bathing, let alone cold water. After Xiao Guo heard what the staff member said, he immediately carried Little Sesame over to dry its fur and check its body. However, he found that this little guy was very healthy. For the next few days, there was no problem at all. It also liked to run to places with water every time. Peanut Candy and Li Yuanba also let it be and didn't care at all. There was no other way. Xiao Guo had to pay attention to this restless little guy again. Today, when Jingtan entered the studio, he found that the atmosphere was not right. Today, he didn't find the guy with spots all over his body. Only the paparazzi was filming at the shooting site. As for the other cats, they all looked like they were not in the right state. They looked like they were on guard, or they looked like they were afraid. There was even one that was still hiding in its nest. No matter how the person in charge of taking care of it comforted it, it wouldn't come out. After working together for so long, with Jingtan's understanding of it, if this cat wasn't frightened, it wouldn't be acting like this. Sniffing the smell in the room, Jingtan was surprised. That guy was actually here? Jumping onto the table by the window, Jingtan looked outside. There were 2 inconspicuous cars. When he came in from outside, he didn't notice them. Now that he looked carefully, he seemed to have seen the drivers in the cars before. Was it Master Tang the 7th or Yi Hao's driver? It seemed that someone had brought the Monsignor here to see his wife and children. No wonder the cats in the studio were not in the right state. Even the good-tempered dogs looked like they were facing a great enemy. In contrast, the paparazzi was much more special. It was as if he didn't notice at all. When he was first rescued from the disaster area, the paparazzi was about 2 months old. Now, at the end of July, the paparazzi was 4 months old. Compared to when he was first sent over, he no longer looked weak and pitiful. He was much stronger. The 2 front legs that were amputated were only left with a short section. Usually, he spent a lot of time standing. In the beginning, he only jumped. When he jumped, he was like a kangaroo. Later, he slowly tried to walk with his 2 hind legs. The people in the pet center were always paying attention to the paparazzi's physical condition. The food was specially prepared. Apart from everyone's efforts, the paparazzi himself was indeed strong enough to recover to his current state. Usually, when the other cats ignored him, he would play with Sesame, running around the studio, or find the good-tempered dogs in the studio who often participated in the shooting. Sometimes, he would even lie down and sleep. Perhaps because he couldn't jump to high places like the other cats, and because he was saved by the dogs, the paparazzi spent more time with the dogs. The staff would also tease him sometimes. Cats that had experienced great disasters would either become more timid, and would be frightened by the slightest movement, or they would become like the paparazzi now, with an especially strong resistance to pressure. Many cats in the pet center were not in their best condition because of the arrival of the Monsignor. They had been maintaining a sense of vigilance and fear, and wished that they could hide in their nests and not come out. However, the paparazzi was not like that. Even if this guy only had 2 legs, he was still jumping around happily as usual. This was what Xiao Gua and the people in the studio were happy to see. No matter how you looked at it, a cat that was full of vitality in this state could have a positive effect if it was filmed into a video. Now, society needed some positive energy. Because the other cats weren't doing their best today, Xiao Guo let the people in the studio film the paparazzi first and let Jingtan cooperate. They couldn't count on the other cats. With the addition of Jingtan, the paparazzi, who didn't know how to cooperate, made fewer mistakes. Most of the time, it was Jingtan who guided his actions. This also made the staff feel relieved. After all, even if the paparazzi was full of energy, he was still a small cat, and a disabled one at that. If he was tired, they would feel bad. After the filming, Jingtan thought that he hadn't seen the Monsignor for a long time, and decided to go over and see if the Monsignor had changed. Following the smell and hearing the small sounds coming from the room, Jingtan came to the door, looked at the door lock, and jumped up to open it. The door was not locked. After opening it, Jingtan stuck his head in. There were 4 people standing in the room: Xiao Gua, Swallow, Master Tang the 7th, and a person who followed Master Tang the 7th. The 4 cats, Monsignor, Li Yuanba, Peanut Candy, and Sesame. The Monsignor was still the same. For years had passed, and he still looked the same as he did 4 years ago. Many people said that when cats were kept in captivity, they would lose some of their original wildness, just like the cats in the pet center, who were relatively good-tempered. The Monsignor had been with Yi Hao and Master Tang the 7th for 4 years, but his murderous nature had not disappeared. Jingtan could feel that he could kill people in the past, and he could do the same now. Perhaps he had already killed again. After all, he was with Yi Hao and Master Tang the 7th now, and it was possible that he would encounter a dangerous situation again. However, whether or not he was a ferocious cat, the Monsignor treated Li Yuanba, Peanut Candy, and Sesame quite well. He lay next to Li Yuanba, and Peanut Candy and Sesame surrounded him, biting and scratching his paws. Xiao Gua sat with Master Tang the 7th and told him about the 3 cats. Master Tang the 7th sat on the sofa with a smile, leaning on his crutches, and listened. When he saw Jingtan, Master Tang the 7th even greeted him. He knew Jingtan. As for Li Yuanba and the others in the pet center, Jingtan guessed that Master Tang the 7th had probably investigated the Monsignor when he kept him by his side back then. Perhaps Master Tang the 7th had allowed the Monsignor to come here many times in the past 2 years. However, just like what Jiao Pa had said, the Monsignor's bloodline and origin were destined to be different from ordinary cats. At the same time, it also led to a low fertility rate. In the past few years, Li Yuanba had given birth to 2 cats, but both of them were premium. Peanut Candy, needless to say, was very strong. Just ask the cat owners in the area and you would know how strong she was. She had expanded her range of challenges, and her reputation for daring to fight with dogs was very well known. As for Sesame, who was still in its infancy, its body was also very strong, and its spirit was not bad. It even had a unique fur color. As the saying goes, quality is more important than quantity. This was the case. Master Tang the 7th once again mentioned the matter of buying Sesame, but Xiao Guo politely rejected it. Master Tang the 7th was not angry. He just said that if it worked, they could get another one. If it didn't work, then forget it. It didn't matter. Having one cat like this was enough. Any more and it would be easy for accidents to happen, and it would be difficult to control. Since they were having a reunion, Jingtan did not go over to join in the fun. Just as he was about to walk out, Xiaoguo stopped him. Black Charcoal, come over here for a moment. As Xiaoguo spoke, he walked out and brought Jingtan to another room. That was his resting room now. In the past few years, Xiaoguo was used to speaking directly to Jingtan. He did not treat Jingtan as an ordinary cat. Director Yang gave me a call last week. It's Director Yang Yi from Yixing Culture. You know him. He said that the documentary is already out, and it will be broadcasted on CCTV this week. At the same time, they are also planning to make this documentary into a series. The second part will be filmed in Pearl City. He was thinking that if there's a need, he might need your help. That documentary is out? Speaking of which, Jingtan thought quite highly of that documentary. Although it was just a documentary and could not be shown in prime time or on the big screen, it was the first documentary that Jingtan had participated in. It was not a pet advertisement or a pet promotional video. It was an official, formal documentary. He had put in a lot of effort, and even his makeup and hair had dried. He just did not know what kind of response the documentary would have, and what the reviews would be. I'm thinking that the person surnamed Yang is probably still thinking about you. His company seems to be investing in a few documentaries that involve animals. If the response to this documentary is good, he might ask you to film other documentaries. Well, the ones on the big screen. After a pause, Xiaoguo was afraid that Jingtan would lose his temper, so he added, of course, the most important thing is still your mood. I won't interfere with what you and your cat father decide to do. The salary of those documentaries is at most 100,000 yuan. But the person surnamed Yang owns a big company, so we have to be tactful in rejecting him. Don't make a fuss. If one day you are as successful as Crystal, that Capuchin monkey, then it will be a different story. You can do whatever you want, and we will have to suck up to you. Xiaoguo laughed. Chapter 341. Monsignor stayed in the pet center for a day and then left with Mr. Tang VII. However, Mr. Tang VII seemed to have reached some kind of agreement with Xiaoguo. Jingtan had a feeling that he would probably see Monsignor more often in the pet center in the future. At least, it would not be as rare as before. Peanut Candy and Sesame still stayed in the pet center with Li Yuanba. They lived a good life here, mainly because Li Yuanba was here. Peanut Candy had already gotten used to the life here. As for Sesame, it was still young, so Xiaoguo and Yanzi were reluctant to give it away. Jingtan had secretly looked up the Capuchin monkey, Crystal, mentioned by Xiaoguo on the internet when he was alone at home. He knew that this guy was a comedy star with a high salary and was very rich. No matter whether it was in TV series or on the big screen, this guy could be seen everywhere. Some of the cats from Xiaoguo's studio had also appeared on the big screen, but they had only appeared for a few seconds or no more than 2 or 3 minutes, which was different from the real animal celebrities. Of course, Jingtan did not want to compete with the animal stars. Different countries had different social rules and animal welfare. Besides, Jingtan himself was a special case. It was impossible for him to compete with the animal stars. Jiao Pa had said that he had to keep a low profile. Therefore, although Jingtan was interested in the big screen that Xiaoguo was fascinated by, he did not think too much about it. After all, everyone had their own way of living. As for competing with Crystal on the same stage, this difficult task would be left to Chi Dada's macaque monkey. After all, they were both monkeys, and they both walked the same path. On the day of the broadcast of the documentary, the Jiao family who had heard the news sat in the living room at night. No one went out. Jiao Pa did not go to the yard either. The family of 4 people and 1 cat all stared at the screen. Jingtan looked at the 4 people who were staring at the screen and did not show any impatience. Suddenly, he had some thoughts. It was just a documentary, but the whole family was already waiting in front of the TV. Jiaopa even cancelled a meeting that night. Even though the Jiaopa had told Jingtan to keep a low profile, at this moment, the 4 members of the Jiao family couldn't contain their excitement and pride. Would the 4 members of the Jiao family be even more excited if it was a TV series or a movie on the big screen? After all, in most cases, documentaries did not have as much influence on the public as TV series and movies. What Jingtan filmed in Xiaoguo's studio could only be considered a small fuss to please some online viewers. Should he develop it further? While Jingtan was thinking, Zhao Yuan said excitedly, "It's starting. It's starting." Jingtan raised his head and looked at the TV. The title of the documentary was displayed, City People, Cats. There was also a subtitle at the end of the article, Capital Cat Affair. Looking at the title, it was obvious that Yang Yi had been wanting to make a series for a long time. This was the capital episode, the next one was the Pearl episode. Who knew which city would be next? Was Yang Yi going to film all the major cities in the country? Probably not. The documentary wasn't long. The commercials didn't even add up to an hour. When Jingtan was in the shot, the Jiao family was very excited. Even though Jingtan's fur was dyed, to the Jiao family, black charcoal was still black charcoal. The 4 of them even commented on Jingtan's role and acting in the film. Of course, the other cats also discussed it, including Big Amy and other cats. From the old capital city to the modern skyscrapers of the capital city, the different sceneries, the people who lived there, and the lively figures who were active in various places were presented on the screen one by one. Domesticated, homeless, living in luxurious mansions, squatting in alleyways, noble, country bumpkin, serious, crazy. But no matter what kind of cat, Yang Yi wanted to show the aura and ruffian spirit that belonged to the cats of the capital. In the beginning, to Jingtan, the cats there weren't anything special. But after editing the film, it gave off a completely different feeling. No wonder people said that it was different when you were on the screen. Jingtan looked at himself on the screen and felt that he had become artistic. Different stories, different scenes, accompanied by different music, the audience reminisced along with the documentary. Some people reminisced about the old alley of Hutong, some reminisced about the blurry little figure in their memories that could only be seen in some old photos, and some reminisced about the people and things that had once lived there and were related to it. When he first participated in the filming, he didn't think much of it. But when it was actually produced, Jingtan found that the film was very moving and resonated with many people. In the few memory scenes that Jingtan participated in, there were photos of the cats that Yang Yi's grandfather took when he was alive. Each photo recorded the city of that era, the people of that era, and the cats that were active in that era. At the end of the film, there was a quote from an editor of Pet Word magazine: "We may live in different cities, see different sceneries, live different lives, pass different strangers every day, and open the door with different feelings, but what greets us is the same kind of happiness." When you hug the cat's warm body and quietly observe the city, do you know how many stories here are related to cats? Do you know what is happening in other cities? Do we fall in love with this city because of the cats, or do we have cats because of this city? After watching, Zhao Pa went to search the official website of the film. Since he planned to make it into a series, Yang Yi also created an official website. There were some new promotional videos that had already been edited. They were some clips that were currently being filmed in Pearl City. How was this planning to film? They had clearly started work a long time ago. It was even possible that the filming was almost done. Jingtan thought that if he really wanted to participate in the film, there would be someone who came to talk to Zhao Pa about it. It seemed that Jingtan might not be needed for the next few series. There were quite a lot of people who posted on the official forum. Most of the people who resonated with the Beijing chapter had lived in the old capital, or were currently living in the capital. With the Beijing chapter as a precedent, some people in Pearl City were also looking forward to the filming of the Pearl City chapter. 10 miles of the ocean, the pearl of a century. Some people compared the cats of Pearl City to the pretty girls of a humble family who had walked out of the village. They were a little beautiful and enchanting. They were leisurely and relaxed, making people unconsciously moved. In the flickering lights and passing shadows that made people unable to stop themselves, the cats here were like the beauties of that era. In the depths of the mortal world, in the old dreams of the old Pearl City, they appeared and disappeared, but never left. Looking at the meaning of the promotional video, it was going to replay decades of the past. The beauties of that era brought their cats to reenact those glorious and lonely old dreams. Maybe, the characteristics lived in the era, or maybe it was just the presentation method and focus of the film. The cats of each city would integrate the characteristics of different eras in that city. It was exaggerated art, but it was quite comfortable to watch. It was just that he didn't know when the film would be filmed in Chuhua City. In terms of historical significance, Chuhua City was also an old city. However, strictly speaking, Jingtan wasn't a native of Chuhua City. If the film was really filmed here, would Jingtan participate in it? Sigh, he would talk about it when the time came. It was still too early to talk about it. In the next few days, when Jingtan was alone at home, he would specifically go to the film review and related areas of the major forums. Most of the reviews of the documentary were very good. In some pet forums, in the pet cat section, the documentary was promoted again and again. Every time he saw someone promote the documentary, Jingtan couldn't help but be happy. Although no one could recognize him, it couldn't stop Jingtan's good mood from seeing the good reviews. In the forum, there was a post called 10 Expressions of the Cats in the Documentary. Out of the 10, Jingtan occupied 3, Dammy occupied 1, Xiaomi another, and the other 5 were other cats. However, the first cat wasn't Jingtan, but Dammy. The scene of Dammy squatting on the wall and laughing down below was forwarded by many people, with different funny subtitles attached. In some chat software, netizens cut that scene and made it into a GIF and posted it everywhere. Thus, Dammy became popular on the internet. Far away in Beijing, Fang Xiaokong sat in his office and flipped through the posts about Dammy and laughed for a long time. Just when Jingtan thought that Yang Yi was using all his energy to film the documentary series, the Jiao Pa received a call from Yang Yi. Yang Yi said that there was a film that he wanted Jingtan to act in. The Jiao Pa didn't reject him directly. He went home and asked Jingtan for his opinion. During this period of time, Jingtan had been thinking if he had the chance to act in a film. He didn't want to be the main lead, just a minor supporting role would be enough. Appearing for 5 minutes would be enough. Even a cameo would be fine. When the time came, the Jiao family would definitely go to the cinema to watch it. Now that he heard the Jiao Pa's words and deduced from Yang Yi's words, it was a relatively important role. Act. Why not act? If he could get paid and appear on the big screen, he wouldn't be a cat in vain. As for the low profile that the Jiao Pa mentioned, as long as he hid his identity, he could sign an agreement with Yang Yi. However, it was another film about cats. Was Yang Yi going against cats? A week later, on the weekend, Yang Yi brought his classmate and came straight to his door. Because he had called in advance, the Jiao Pa was waiting at home. The person that Yang Yi brought over was his high school classmate. He was now a director called Kong Han. He looked like a good person. The film that Yang Yi told the Jiao Pa about was the one that Kong Han was going to direct. However, this film was a little special. Therefore, when Yang Yi saw the script, the first person that came to mind was Jingtan, who he had worked with before. Kong Han originally didn't decide to act in this film. If he did, it would probably take a lot of effort and trouble because it involved animals. The final result might not be as good as he wanted. However, after Yang Yi saw it, he told him that there was someone who might be able to help. Therefore, the two of them were sitting here now. Kong Han looked at the black cat lying on the sofa. It seemed to be looking at him too. Its gaze was just like a human's. It was just 2F** king fitting of the image in his mind. Jingtan felt that the young director's gaze was a little strange. However, after listening to Yang Yi's conversation with the Jiao Pa, it seemed that when he was talking to Xiao Guo on the phone, he wasn't talking about the documentary. Instead, he was talking about another film that their company had invested in. Yang Yi was no longer with the documentary crew. "Oh right, the script you mentioned on the phone, what's it about?" When the Jiao Pa picked up the phone, the surroundings were a little noisy. Moreover, Yang Yi's words were vague, so he didn't hear what it was about. Yang Yi didn't say anything. He looked at Kong Han and let him, who knew the script better, speak. Kong Han smiled and said, "It's not complicated. It's about a man who suddenly turns into a cat." Enchanting. Chapter 342. Upon hearing Kong Han's words, Enchanting's body stiffened. "Damn it, I'm breaking out in cold sweat. I suddenly feel very guilty." Enchanting turned his head to look in another direction and stopped looking at Kong Han. However, his ears were still perked up, for fear that he would miss the latter part of Kong Han's words. "Professor Jiao, your cat can be considered as half of the main character of this film," Kong Han said with a smile. Usually, the term main character was very attractive to actors. As for why it was considered half of the main character, it had something to do with the plot. "Can you be more specific?" the Jiaopa asked. If he could let his cat act as the main character, he wouldn't mind playing a supporting role. However, half of the main character sounded quite important. "As I said just now, the plot is about a grown man waking up to find that he has turned into a cat," Kong Han explained unhurriedly. Upon hearing this, Enchanting was speechless. Waking up from a sleep? Did no one really find out about my past? Fortunately, when Kong Han continued, Enchanting discovered that the main character in the script was a white-collar worker and not a university student. Turning into a cat also didn't mean that he would return to the past. Furthermore, his cat form and human form would alternate. In other words, the main character would sometimes turn into a cat and sometimes remain human. Enchanting heaved a sigh of relief because the script was different from Enchanting's situation. However, to a certain extent, Enchanting could be considered to be acting as himself in this film. Other than Enchanting, no other cat could act as well as Enchanting. After hearing Kong Han's brief explanation, the Jiaopa nodded in agreement. He could roughly guess what was going on, but he still waited quietly for Kong Han to continue. "The male lead in the film has turned into a cat. Hence, Professor Jiao, your cat and the popular young actor Shi Xiaotian have shared the lead roles. However, strictly speaking, your cat has more scenes than Shi Xiaotian." Enchanting had heard of Shi Xiaotian before. Many of the girls in Little Pomelo's school were die-hard fans of Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian was also one of the people who stood out after Gong Zizhao's incident. Enchanting didn't know what Shi Xiaotian's personality was like for the time being. "Where's the female lead?" "Oh, sorry, I'm just asking." "If it's not convenient, you don't have to tell me," Jiaopa said. "That's fine. The female lead has already been decided. Have you heard of Wei Wen? I've acted in a palace drama and an idol drama." Kong Han didn't try to hide too much. There weren't many actors that had been confirmed, and there were still a lot of variables. However, Yang Yi said that he would try his best to answer Professor Jiao's questions. After all, it was rare to find such a cat, and Professor Jiao didn't seem like a chatterbox. "Wei Wen. That girl was not bad. She had a good face and a good figure. She was the object of many people's fantasies." However, Enchanting remembered that Wei Wen would only become popular in another 2 years. As for now, she was not among the celebrities who were bursting with popularity. Could it be that the upcoming movie wasn't good or popular? Enchanting shook his head. Everything was unknown. He hadn't heard of such a movie back then. Jiaopa wasn't a fan of celebrities and hence, he didn't have much of an impression of Wei Wen and Shi Xiaotian. He made a mental note of their names and planned to check up on them later. After all, his cat was going to be filming with those people, and the personalities of those people would affect his cat's treatment. Although he had never acted before, he had heard of all sorts of underhanded means on set. If he wasn't careful enough, he might even get backstabbed. His cat wasn't human. Even if it was wronged, it wouldn't voice it out. Kong Han and Yang Yi chatted with Jiaopa for a while. They heaved a sigh of relief after Professor Jiaopa nodded. They then took out the contract that they had drafted beforehand and showed it to Jiaopa. In the past few years, they had signed plenty of contracts because of Enchanting. Hence, Jiao Pa had also gained some experience. Hence, he carefully read the terms and conditions of the contract. There weren't any traps in the contract either. Just like what Yang Yi had said over the phone, Jiao Pa wouldn't let his cat suffer any losses. There's nothing wrong with the contract, but Jiao Pa didn't sign it immediately after reading it. Instead, he looked at Yang Yi and said, "I hope you can add another clause or sign a supplementary agreement." Yang Yi nodded and gestured for Jiao Pa to continue. As long as the supplementary agreement wasn't too overboard, everything would be fine. The supplementary agreement that Jiao Pa had proposed was actually a confidentiality agreement regarding Jingtan. Just like before, even though Father Jiao had agreed to let Jingtan play the role, he knew some business tricks. If his cat really became popular, there would be benefits, but there would be more trouble. However, it was impossible to prevent Jingtan from really hiding his identity. If he couldn't use his real name, then he would use a fake name. To put it mildly, it was called a stage name. Jingtan's stage name was Black Sea, or BC for short. This name was already quite famous in certain circles on the internet. However, if he were to use it, Yang Yi and the others wouldn't even need to hype it up. The internet would be able to dig it up and it would still attract more attention. It was said that celebrities wore glasses and masks when they went out on the streets. Would Jiao Pa have to worry about his cat being surrounded when he went out for a walk? Even if the movie didn't become popular, Jiao Pa still didn't want to take the risk. Hence, some things had to be prepared in advance. Changing his name again? After listening to Jiao Pa's explanation, Yang Yi didn't understand why this family had such an attitude when everyone else wanted to be famous. Keeping a low profile? Why? Yang Yi could say with certainty that as long as the publicity was good and the right operations were done properly, this cat would definitely become popular. Its value might not be comparable to that of the best actors and actresses, but it might be comparable to that of a small celebrity. After all, there weren't any famous animal celebrities in the country. Even the monkey named Big Brother Chi, who was active in the TV series recently, couldn't compare. However, on the other hand, this family was really good to the cat. This was also for the cat's sake. Of course, no matter what Yang Yi thought, the supplementary agreement still had to be signed. This agreement wasn't too much. Even some celebrities had changed their stage names a few times. As long as the cat could understand it, it would be fine. It would be troublesome if it didn't understand when they arrived at the set. After thinking it through, Yang Yi nodded. Okay. Professor Jiao, what stage name do you think Black Charcoal will change to? ZT. The letter Z and the letter T, said Jiao Pa as his finger drew the shape of two letters in the air. ZT? Yang Yi and Kong Han were puzzled. Why did it sound like a simplified name? That's right, said Jiao Pa. He couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't the one who came up with the name. He had always been very democratic. ZT was the name Jiao Pa. After Jiao Pa said that he wanted to change his stage name, Jingtan directly typed it on the keyboard in front of Jiao Pa's computer. Jiao Pa even asked Jingtan what it meant. However, Jingtan pretended to be ignorant. Jiao Pa didn't ask further and just treated it as a random letter. After everything was settled, Kong Han and Yang Yi left. They rejected Jiao Ma's invitation to stay for dinner. They still had something to do at night and there were a few people here who needed to go over to meet up. The four members of the Jiao family knew that Jingtan was going to act in a movie. However, Jiao Pa said that they should keep it to themselves and not spread it around. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo had dealt with similar situations many times. Naturally, they understood the meaning behind it. However, when they knew that their cat was going to act in a movie, the two children couldn't hold back their excitement. They often gathered together to discuss it. Jiao Ma sometimes joined in the discussion as well. It was obvious that they were looking forward to Jingtan's performance. This made Jingtan even more confident. The decision was right. Yang Yi said that the movie would start shooting in September. It was still early, but the four members of the Jiao family and the cat should take advantage of the summer vacation to gather together. When September came, they would probably be separated from Jingtan for a period of time. It would definitely be longer than last year's documentary. Since Jingtan had decided to make a movie, Xiaoguo had to give him a heads up. Before Jingtan left Chuhua City, Xiaoguo asked Jingtan to work overtime a few times. Of course, overtime pay was indispensable. Therefore, in August, Jingtan came to the pet center more frequently to work overtime. At the same time, Yang Yi's documentary gave Xiaoguo an idea. Since Jingtan would be absent for a period of time, Xiaoguo wanted to make a different documentary. Since Yang Yi had already made a regional documentary, Xiaoguo wanted to make a documentary about the age of the cat. Xiaoguo wanted to make a documentary about Tomcat. Tomcat's standard was that even though 7 or 8 years old was considered old in many people's eyes, there were still quite a few cats over 7 years old in the pet center's treatment records and some pet files. Therefore, Xiaoguo changed the age limit of the documentary to 10 years old and above. Wasn't it a time to promote harmony and positive energy? This was not bad. He wanted to use documentary techniques to record some touching stories between humans and cats. Being able to live with humans for more than 10 years meant that the relationship between them must be quite deep. Xiaoguo thought, I'm not as generous as Yang Yi. I don't have the same level of hardware and manpower. I can't make something too artistic, but I can go for nature's novelty. Close to life. Filming this documentary about Tomcat would take a long time. Even if Jingtan was absent, there would be something to attract customers and viewers. It would avoid the impact of rumors on the official website like last year when Jingtan was away filming a documentary. Xiaoguo didn't want to be blocked at people's doorsteps again. Now, Xiaoguo was preparing for the filming of Tomcat. First, he had to contact customers who had cats of the right age. If they refused to cooperate, Xiaoguo wouldn't force them. Of course, most of the customers' families were very happy about this. However, there was a problem. Most of the customers contacted were from better families. These people often came to the pet center to have their cats checked. Xiaoguo naturally knew about this. The pet center had detailed records, but there was little information about ordinary families. These families basically didn't bring their pets for injections. They probably hadn't even had their pets vaccinated, so there would be no treatment records. Xiaoguo wouldn't know about this. He didn't want to choose all the customers from better families. The film had to be more down-to-earth and approachable. So, one day after working overtime, Xiaoguo casually mentioned this to Jingtan in the lounge when he was giving him overtime pay. He said that Jingtan often walked around, so he must know some old cats. Jingtan really did think about it. The child named Wang Xing often came to Chuhua University to pick up bottles. There were a lot of bottles in the summer, so the child's harvest seemed to be good. His family's cat fit the bill. Jingtan brought Xiaoguo to the old neighborhood. Xiaoguo followed Jingtan's line of sight and saw the cat lying on the second-floor windowsill. Wang Xing's family was easy to persuade. For them, they could pay for the filming and give free treatment to the cat. Why not? After the matter was settled, Jingtan brought his people to the set. They were still the same people who filmed the documentary last year. Charlie naturally continued to act as an assistant. Knowing that Jingtan was going to change his stage name to ZT, Xiaoguo specially went to get a set of clothes. The hats and t-shirts that he gave to Jingtan's followers all had the letter Z on them. Chapter 343. Well, this is where you will be staying for the next 3 months, a receptionist said as he opened the door and led Jingtan and the others into the house. This person was sent by Yang Yi. Yang Yi had already arranged the accommodation. It was 3 rooms and a living room, enough for Jingtan and the people he brought over. Is there anything else you need? The man asked. Charlie looked around, especially the room arranged for Jingtan. As an assistant, Charlie had served Jingtan for a few years. He was very familiar with Jingtan's preferences. He could tell at a glance whether it was suitable or not. Obviously, Yang Yi still valued Jingtan very much. Charlie was very satisfied with the arrangement of the room. When arranging the rooms, Yang Yi had asked Charlie and Jiaopa naturally. There were some things that Jingtan disliked, such as food, certain smells, etc. The windowsills were also newly installed with protective nets to prevent accidents. "Not for now," Charlie said with satisfaction. "Well, if you need anything, just give me a call." The man exchanged contact information with Charlie and left after talking about the daily arrangements. He had to report to Yang Yi and arrange the follow-up matters. Even though he was very curious about the black cat, he still held back. As one of Yang Yi's confidants, he knew what to ask and what not to ask. It was okay to be curious, but you had to know your limits. This time, besides Charlie, there were 4 other people who came with Jingtan. Not all of them were here to serve Jingtan. Charlie was enough. They came at the request of Yang Yi and Kong Han. Some of them were working as lighting engineers in Xiaogua's studio, and some were working as sound engineers. No matter what, they were experienced in shooting cats, so they knew which lights would affect the cat's mood during shooting, which sounds would interfere with the cat, and so on. They also studied cat calls. In Jingtan's view, a lot of them were superfluous. However, they were sent by Yang Yi and Kong Han, and by Xiaogua's personal order. Jingtan didn't care too much. Anyway, he wasn't the one who paid the salary, so he didn't need to worry too much. Even though their current profession was pet photography, most of the people in Xiaogua's studio had professional backgrounds and were very familiar with this industry. Now that the movie had not started shooting, the few of them were sitting on the sofa watching TV and discussing. Jingtan occupied a sofa chair and listened to their conversation. This city was close to the sea and was quite prosperous. It was said to be Kong Han's hometown. The choice of filming location was decided by the scriptwriter and director, Kong Han. Some time ago, someone had criticized the phenomenon of writer-director, saying that it would cause movies to have no depth and low creativity. In fact, this script wasn't considered innovative. Some comics and novels had similar plots, but Kong Han seemed to have his own obsession. Just like Yang Yi's documentary, they only needed an opportunity to pick up this obsession that had been suppressed in the bottom of their hearts. Rumor had it that Kong Han was also a cat keeper back then. He had been raising cats since he was a child. Another person with a story. Yang Yi had arranged for people from the 18th floor to the 20th floor of the residential area so that they could see the sea. Jingtan and the rest were on the 20th floor so they could see the sea from the window of the living room. Jingtan looked at the window next to him. The sky outside was bluer than Chuhua City. Obviously, the environment and air quality here was much better than Chuhua City. Charlie and the others were discussing what they knew. The actors for this movie had been roughly decided. When they were in the elevator just now, they had seen a guy who seemed to be an agent and instinctively recognized him. "Hey, do you guys think Wei Wen has arrived?" A person about the same age as Charlie asked expectantly. When the few men gathered together, the first thing they discussed was naturally the women. Wei Wen, as the main lead, was naturally one of the main points of their discussion. Other than Wei Wen, they also discussed a few female supporting roles. "I didn't see Wei Wen, but when I went to park the car, I saw a girl who could cause a commotion just by moving." The person who spoke even reached out his hand and gestured in front of his chest with a wretched expression. "Is she also from the crew?" The others asked with bright eyes. The person shook his head. "She doesn't look like it." The others immediately became listless, but they quickly became excited and started to discuss the other actors. As they were talking, the doorbell rang. Charlie, who was closest to the door, looked through the peephole and gestured to the people on the sofa. The few of them looked at each other and moved quickly. There was no trace of the wretchedness they had when they were discussing the topic that was not suitable for children. They had no choice but to be cautious. If there was a problem, they would have to pack up and leave immediately. Before they came, Xiaogua had told them that the crew was not their working group, nor was it the group that made the documentary. There might be a lot of tricks involved. A cat could not guard against anything, so naturally, they would have to deal with it. It was not that they were malicious. The human heart was unpredictable and it was always good to be cautious. No one wanted to build a ladder for others and harm their own interests. The person who came in was a woman who looked to be in her 20s. Women always made men less vigilant. The woman was wearing casual clothes and had shoulder-length black hair. Although she was not very beautiful, when she smiled, her eyes curved and she looked very likable. "Sorry to disturb you, I live downstairs. My surname is Yang Huaishi, from Yixing culture. May I ask if you are also from the crew of Black Cat?" The woman with the surname Yang introduced herself. She was the manager of the few actors downstairs, and she was just here to visit. She did not talk much. After chatting with Charlie and the others for a while, she put down the gifts and left. After closing the door, Charlie and the others started to discuss again. She brought gifts when she visited? It's high-end tea. She's probably here to find out the truth. She has the same surname as the big boss of Yixing culture, probably not related. Why would she need to come here personally to find out? That's true. But it's better to be careful. I think someone downstairs wants to use our black ZT to make a name for themselves. Zheng Tan only listened to Charlie and the others' discussion. The sofa was facing the window, so when Yang Huaishi came in, she did not see Zheng Tan due to the angle. Zheng Tan did not care about those people. He was thinking about what the Jiao Pa had told him before leaving Chuhua City. When they were filming the documentary, the Jiao Pa had said that they could not be too smart, and that they had to make mistakes. Filming a movie required a lot of technical skills, so Zheng Tan was thinking about how to make mistakes as natural as possible. Compared to Zheng Tan, who was leisurely thinking about how to make a mistake, the main actors and supporting actors were much more nervous. This was especially true for the newbies who had been selected this time. They were afraid that something might go wrong. A single mistake could ruin their good impression of the director and the big boss. Of course, being on good terms with the crew, especially the more important ones, was also very beneficial for the small actors. Otherwise, Yang Huaishi would not have come up to ask about the situation. While they were testing each other in the temporary residence, Yang Yi was chatting with Kong Han after listening to the report from his subordinates. Although Kong Han had not acted in many movies, the response was not bad. It was just that he was young and did not have a satisfactory reputation in the country. Kong Han liked to use newcomers. This time, the main lead of the film was not considered a real big shot. The so-called popular young actors were just a joke to many people in the industry. There were many who were short-lived, not to mention those who were famous on the path of idols. There were also a few important supporting roles that people had never heard of before. There were also a few who were newly signed. Of course, most of them were from Yixing culture. Yang Yi was rich. No one would say anything if he invested money to promote his own people. As for who he would promote, it would depend on their performance. There were no superstars in this movie. Yang Yi, the big boss of Yixing culture, was here to watch the filming. The actors and actresses of Yixing culture knew what this meant, so they were nervous. Kong Han and Yang Yi were both people with high standards. Kong Han felt that the computer special effects in the movie made up for the actors' inability to perform difficult or dangerous actions to a certain extent. However, they would never be able to perform the actors' unique and charming expressions. Many famous actors and actresses often relied on a smile or a look to reach the realm of perfection and leave a deep impression in people's hearts. Therefore, Kong Han always felt that it would be more effective to use a real cat in this movie and not use computer special effects. As for Yang Yi, his focus was not on this movie. It was different from the documentary where he really put his heart and soul into it. This movie was just a channel for him to give his actors and actresses a chance to perform. Yixing culture couldn't compare to the big shots of the entertainment industry with some history. Therefore, Yang Yi wanted to create a superstar of Yixing culture. At the top of the pyramid of professional actors and actresses, there were very few superstars. There were many stars in the country, but the number of real movie stars was very small. Superstars who could bring investment trust and box office returns were few and far between. In the domestic movie market, there were very few real superstars who could attract audiences to the cinema. There were no more than 10 of them, male or female. Moreover, this was the overall lineup of the Chinese movie market formed by combining the resources of the three countries on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Other actors and actresses, although famous, could not guarantee box office returns. This included many names that the audience was familiar with. At the moment, the value of superstars was more reflected in the investment problem. When a movie had a truly luxurious cast, the investment problem was immediately solved. When a movie had a group of superstars, the future box office could be predicted. The investors would calmly invest a huge amount of money, not only to pay the actors and actresses, but also to use the scenes, special effects, equipment, and other aspects. Therefore, when a commercial film attempted to create some creative possibilities, it needed the protection of these big stars. For directors, this was often a very helpless reality. Kang Han was one of the few people in the circle of directors, but it was hard to say what would happen in the future. This was the rule of this commercial era. Only superstars could make Yixing culture rise to prominence in this industry. Once, when he was filming Cats in the City, Yang Yi wanted to make Jingtan into a superstar. Sometimes, as long as it was done well, animals could attract more box office returns than humans. Just because it did not happen now did not mean it would not happen in the future. Unfortunately, his wish did not come true. It could be seen from the reaction of the Jiao family during the documentary. This time, when they signed the contract for the movie, Yang Yi immediately dismissed the idea. "So, you want to see those seedlings perform?" Kang Han looked at the person across the table. Yang Yi laughed and said jokingly, "Actually, I'm more looking forward to seeing those seedlings perform with a cat. Don't think that cat will only follow the instructions." Chapter 344. Concealing one's weaknesses was a skill. While concealing one's weaknesses, one had to be able to conceal one's skills and not reveal one's true strength. This was what Zheng Tan had been pondering. When Zheng Tan had joined Xiaoguo's studio, he had heard a lot from the people in the working group. At that time, the people in the studio had said a lot of things in front of Zheng Tan. They even criticized him and pointed at him. They thought that Zheng Tan couldn't understand them, so they didn't care. Of course, they didn't dare to do that now. At that time, Zheng Tan had learned the difference between a field cat and the more attractive and expensive cat breeds. Sometimes, the more eye-catching cat breeds didn't even need to do anything in front of the camera to attract people's attention, while the more ordinary ones needed to do more. In front of the stage and behind the scenes, more things were always needed to make up for congenital deficiencies. Zheng Tan had learned to hide her weaknesses in front of the camera and present a better side of herself to the audience. That was what she had learned from filming her pets. Of course, concealing one's shortcomings and playing to one's strengths and avoiding one's weaknesses seemed to be a necessary skill for stars. How to smile, to what extent to smile, which side profile was better, and so on, were all clear in their hearts. Why did many runway models, especially those who had their own exclusive lighting design, try to build a good relationship with the lighting designer? Every model had their own strengths and weaknesses, and each face had its own characteristics. Different lighting effects could be presented as strengths or weaknesses. When walking on the runway, there were cameras all around. In order to capture a more perfect picture, besides makeup, lighting effects were also a very important factor. A suitable angle and eyes, plus the right lighting, could directly improve the effect of showing off. Showing off in front of the camera was a skill. Zheng Tan had been very skilled in using this skill after shooting advertisements for several years. There were many people with acting skills, and there were also animals with acting skills. As long as they were trained, they could fool people, such as the famous monkey Chi Dada. Acting skills? Indeed, it was more vivid than the other monkeys. Perhaps the other monkeys were trained to imitate human movements and expressions, but Chi Dada would integrate some of its own emotions into it. However, from Yang Yi's point of view, Zheng Tan was different. Yang Yi had already noticed this during the filming of the documentary. Perhaps it was because he was now used to picking celebrities. Even if the person in front of the camera was just a cat, Yang Yi would not miss out on the small details. For example, Zheng Tan's small tricks in front of the camera. Sometimes, it was hard to associate this cat with a mongrel cat. It looked like a mongrel cat, but it felt different from the mongrel cats that one usually saw. This was also the reason why Yang Yi valued Zheng Tan. Perhaps, Jingtan himself did not know that his little tricks had been discovered. Previously, it was not without reason to include Jingtan in the superstar development plan. What a pity, Yang Yi lay on the recliner and looked out of the window, thinking about the possibility of tricking the cat over. On the other side, Jingtan squatted and looked at the three people blocking the door expressionlessly. He didn't make a sound or move. He just looked at them. It's here, it's that look again. Charlie, who was blocking the door, looked conflicted. They had to be conflicted. If they took a step back, they would feel uneasy. If they didn't, they would feel pressured under such a gaze. Every time they saw that look, they would feel a chill down their backs. Not just Charlie, even the other two people felt that way. However, because they promised Boss Squad to look after the cat, they didn't do anything. Thinking about the situation when Boss Squad went crazy, the three people who were about to move their legs put their feet back. Jingtan continued to stare at the three people expressionlessly. He had already stayed here for 2 days. The weather was good today, and the filming would only start tomorrow. At the beginning, he didn't have his own scenes. Yang Yi said to let him adapt here for a few more days. Cats need time to adapt to a new environment. Someone told Kong Han and Yang Yi that, so Jingtan was very free now. He didn't even need to look at the script. Charlie had already told him about the scene. When the time came, there would be someone to guide him step by step. He didn't have as much pressure as the actors. Once he was free, Jingtan wanted to go out for a walk. It was his first time in this city. If he didn't take a walk, he would feel sorry for himself. However, when he was about to open the door, the three people who were discussing the TV series on the sofa rushed over and blocked the door. They meant that they didn't want Jingtan to go out. Originally, there were 5 people. 2 of them were called over by Kong Han, so now there were only 3 people left here. The 3 people weren't easy to deal with. Jingtan couldn't fool them. He always felt that he was being watched. It was even more restrictive than when he was filming the documentary. He was in a bad mood. Charlie could naturally see that, which was why he was conflicted. He knew that when the cat was in a bad mood, it would easily cause trouble. No matter what it was definitely not something they wanted to see. In the end, Charlie had no choice but to call Xiaogua to ask for instructions. They couldn't stay in a deadlock like this, right? If the negotiation wasn't good, the cat could open the door and slip away. They had to constantly worry about whether the key would be taken by the cat. Among the few people here, only Charlie knew that Jingtan would use the key to open the door. Therefore, they couldn't stop the cat. They had to negotiate. After asking for instructions from Xiaogua directly called the Jiao Pa. Then, Charlie received new instructions. He took out a box from the supplies the Jiao family prepared for Jingtan. There was a cat tag in the box. The cat tag had a contact number on the back and a big Z on the front. Jingtan was speechless. When did the Jiao Pa put it there? Also, what was this thing made of? There was even a Z engraved on it. Jingtan knew that this thing should be able to locate the location. It was similar to the cat tag the Jiao Pa gave Jingtan when he went on a long trip. However, Jingtan didn't expect the Jiao Pa to give him another one because of Jingtan's change of stage name. After putting on the cat tag, Charlie took Jingtan out. The other 2 had nothing to do, so they followed. It was their first time in this coastal city, so they might as well take the opportunity to look around. This time, they didn't wear the uniform Z suit. They were more casual. This made Jingtan sigh in relief. The Z looked very silly. Who knew what other people would think of it? They took the elevator down and stopped when it reached the 18th floor. A man and a woman came in. They frowned when they saw the 3 people and the cat in the elevator. When the man saw Jingtan, his eyes were filled with disdain. He was about to say something when the woman next to him pulled him aside. Then, they started chatting happily with each other. They were talking about some interesting things. Charlie and the other 2 quietly moved their feet and blocked Jingtan behind them. There weren't many people taking the elevator at this time. The elevator wasn't too crowded and it went down quickly. When they reached the first floor, Jingtan walked out of the elevator. The strange man next to him slowed down. When Jingtan walked out of the elevator, he raised his foot and stepped on Jingtan's back paw. Jingtan instinctively felt that something was wrong. He quickened his pace. The man's leather shoes brushed past Jingtan's tail and stepped on the ground. After a few quick steps, Jingtan looked back at the man. The man had already put on his sunglasses, but from his expression, he seemed to be regretful that he didn't step on him. After Jingtan glanced at the man, he followed Charlie and the others to the parking lot. Unlike other celebrities who had nanny cars, the car that they could drive now was borrowed by Yang Yi. It didn't look like a luxury car, but people who knew the industry could tell that it had been modified. Its safety performance was improved by several levels. After Yang Yi knew that they were going out, he told Charlie not to go too far and to call him directly if anything happened. Charlie chose the nearest square, where leisure and entertainment were integrated. It wasn't far from the place they were renting now. It was only a 20-minute drive. Because the temperature wasn't high, the windows were opened. Charlie was driving, Jingtan was in the front passenger seat, and the other two were in the back seat. Jingtan looked at the buildings and scenery outside the window. The wind that blew past contained some car exhaust, but there was also a fishy smell in the wind. Woof woof. A dog barked from behind. Jingtan looked over. There was a dog looking out of the rear window of the car diagonally behind. It barked when it saw Jingtan. Jingtan ignored it at first. However, the owner of the car seemed to be playful. He sped up and controlled the speed of the car so that the rear window of the car was level with Jingtan's front passenger window. Woof woof woof. The dog barked at Jingtan. It didn't know what it smelled, but it sneezed. F***ck. It's not coming out. Jingtan raised his hand to brush the fur on his face. He looked at the dog in front of him with a bad gaze. F***ck. A pharaoh. It's really a pharaoh. This is considered an unpopular breed in the country. Hey, Charlie, look at the road and focus on driving. This dog looks good. It definitely won't be less than 50,000. Charlie glanced at it quickly, then stared ahead and focused on driving. Looking at its appearance, I estimate it to be 100,000 or even higher, said the other person. They knew a lot about pets like cats and dogs. They could estimate the approximate price at a glance. Jingtan didn't care if it was a pharaoh or a rat king. He wanted to punch it a few times now. Hey, it's still wearing a gold necklace. Wear a gold earring if you have the balls. Perhaps the owner of the other car was interested, and Charlie wanted to see the dog more. The two cars drove relatively slowly, and the dog didn't give up barking at Jingtan. Its paws on the window moved twice, as if it wanted to reach over. Jingtan stared at the dog with a gold necklace. His gaze became more and more dangerous. Not only did it snot my face, it also wanted to use its paws. Therefore, when the two cars were the closest to each other, Jingtan stretched out half of her body and slapped the dog's face. The dog probably didn't expect Jingtan to suddenly do that, and it was quite painful. It was stunned, but it was soon annoyed. It wanted to rush out of the window, but it was pulled back by the people in the other car. What a joke. He was driving, and he wanted to rush out? Was he looking for trouble? The two people in the back seat saw Jingtan's actions and were so scared that their hearts were in their throats. They quickly asked Jingtan to sit back down and not stick his head out. It was easy to get into trouble. Charlie also slowed down and distanced himself from the car. F***ck, I was scared to death just now. One of them patted his chest. He thought that Jingtan would jump out directly. There were so many cars behind them. Jumping out was definitely asking for trouble. The car in front seems to be rich too. Do you think they will hold a grudge? The other person in the back seat was a little worried. He saw someone in the car take a picture of their car with his phone. Chapter 345. Looking at the distance between the two cars, the car in front had no intention of slowing down. Charlie and the others felt that the other party should not be so stingy. Otherwise, even if he did not immediately cause trouble, he would at least say some harsh words, right? Okay, don't think too much. We will reach the square soon, Charlie said. The two in the back seat made an N sound, but they felt that the other party's intention of taking a photo with his phone before leaving was a bit like the words, "Don't leave after school if you have the guts," after a conflict in elementary school. They shook their heads. They must be thinking too much. Jing-tan did not think too much. Although he was sneered at just now, he slapped the other party and they were even. They came out to get some fresh air, not to be bullied. Adjusting their mentality and playing freely was the right thing to do. After circling around the square to get a general impression of the place, Charlie found a place to park the car, and then the three people and the cat walked to the square together. This commercial square was a combination of leisure and entertainment. There were fun places and shopping centers, and there were many young people coming and going. Shopping was a bit difficult. After all, they had a cat with them. They could only find a place to sit first and then take turns to buy things. They came here to buy some specialties to bring back. Because Jing-tan was there, it was inconvenient to bring cats into many shops. Some food stores also had signs that restricted pet access. So, after looking around, Charlie chose a beverage store on the side. There were some tables, chairs, and umbrellas outside the beverage store. Some rest tables and chairs were also set up in the square. Now, probably because it was working in school hours, there were not many people. There was an empty table, and Charlie hurried over. The empty table with an umbrella that belonged to the beverage store was gone. Charlie and the others found a table and chair that could not be moved for public use in the square, and there were no umbrellas. Fortunately, the weather was not hot now, and it was okay for the three rough men to bask in the sun. Charlie and Jing-tan stayed here, and the other two went to sell some food and see if there were any special souvenirs. A volunteer came over with a newspaper. Charlie bought a copy to support the charity event and read the news of the city. Jing-tan squatted on a chair and looked around, then his eyes fell on a table not far away. Under the parasol, there were two women sitting there. One was wearing sunglasses, and the other was in her early 20s with a ponytail. She was whispering something to the former, and the latter replied with a few words. Jing-tan didn't recognize the ponytailed girl, but Jing-tan had an impression of the one wearing sunglasses. He didn't recognize her by her face, but by her voice. If Jing-tan remembered correctly, the woman's name was Yang Huaishi. She was currently living on the floor below them. She had even visited them upstairs and left them a box of high-end tea leaves. Probably because the other party was wearing sunglasses, Charlie and the others didn't recognize him when they looked around. Jing-tan couldn't see Yang Huaishi's face because he was sitting on the sofa that day, but he remembered his voice. Yang Huaishi's voice wasn't loud now, so it was hard to recognize him by ear, but it wasn't too difficult for Jing-tan. He remembered that the other party had also mentioned that she was a manager with a few small celebrities under her. So, the other woman who looked quite delicate and gave off a refreshing feeling was also a celebrity? But she wasn't wearing sunglasses or a hat. Shouldn't celebrities wear sunglasses or a hat when they go out? At least, that was what Jing-tan felt. After looking over there for a while, Jing-tan shifted his gaze and looked elsewhere. Then, he saw a very strange person at the corner. That person was facing the glass of the shop next to them, his face twitching. Jing-tan was curious and wanted to go over to take a look. As soon as he jumped down from the chair, Charlie noticed him. Even when he was reading the newspaper, he would occasionally divert some of his attention to stare at Jing-tan. Black. Z, don't go too far. Charlie said nervously, afraid that Jing-tan would run away. Although the cat had gone for a walk in Chuhua City when they were filming outdoor pet commercials and videos, this was an unfamiliar city after all, and it was difficult to deal with any trouble. Jing-tan glanced at Charlie, indicating that he understood, and continued to walk in that direction. The shop at the corner was connected to the shopping center. It used one-way transparent glass, so people standing outside looked at the glass as if they were looking at a mirror. The person standing in front of the glass looked like he was in his early 20s, and his clothes were not conspicuous. At this moment, the person stood in front of the glass, his facial expression changing. Sometimes he was angry, sometimes he was worried, and sometimes he was embarrassed. One moment it was as if he had swallowed a mouthful of delicacies, and the next moment, it was as if he had smelled dog poop, and he wanted to vomit all over the ground. People who didn't know what was going on would probably suspect that this person was crazy, or that his face was twitching. But Jingtan felt that this person seemed to be practicing his acting skills, because sometimes this person would stop and think, and then slowly change his facial expression in front of the glass. Jingtan walked over and squatted there to watch this person change his face in front of the glass at a close distance. Probably because Jingtan's attention was too strong, the person's line of sight moved slightly to look at the cat's reflection in the mirror, and then turned sideways to look at Jingtan, who was 1 meter behind him, and then scratched his head awkwardly. It was always a little embarrassing to be looked at like this, even if the other party was a cat. Boots. Come here for a moment. Yang Huaishi waved over. At the same time, Jingtan also noticed that Yang Huaishi was sitting at the table where he was sitting, talking to Charlie. Another young woman also sat over. Mr. Charlie, this is Xue Ding, we all call him Little Boots. Boots, this is Mr. Charlie. Yang Huaishi introduced them to each other. There were only 4 chairs here, and now that 3 people came over, Jingtan didn't sit, and just squatted at the side. He didn't need to argue with the 3 people over a seat. Charlie glanced at Jingtan, and seeing that Jingtan didn't seem to be impatient, he let out a sigh of relief, and then continued to talk to the 3 people cautiously. After listening to them, Jingtan found out that the girl with the framed glasses was called Tao Qi, and the young man who was practicing his facial expression in front of the glass was called Xue Ding, and they were both playing supporting roles in the film. Tao Qi graduated this year, and she was a professional. Not long ago, she was signed by Yi Xing Culture. As for Xue Ding, he didn't have any formal acting training, but he was an extra for a few years, and was later recruited by Yang Yi. They were the new batch of people who were signed. We didn't start filming today, and I saw that they were too nervous, so I brought them out to relax. Because they're newbies, they're not popular, so no one will disturb them if they sit outside. Yang Huaishi smiled as he spoke to Charlie, and his words were all about the 2 people, which made Charlie confused. What was the use of praising newbies in front of him? He wasn't even from Yi Xing Culture, so he had no right to speak. Yang Huaishi was Yang Yi's distant relative, a distant relative in modern society. Compared to ancient times, their relationship was even more distant. Yang Yi only let Yang Huaishi guide the newbies because of the recommendation of an elder in his hometown, and because he saw that Yang Huaishi had a few years of experience and was a good person. Other than that, Yang Yi wouldn't specially open the door for her, and Yang Huaishi had to do it herself. The reason why Yang Huaishi was so polite to Charlie, and even introduced the 2 newbies through Charlie, was because she happened to see the car Yang Yi gave to Charlie. It was a car specially modified by Yang Yi. According to the information from the elders in her family, Yang Yi wouldn't personally arrange things if he didn't value them. This was also the reason why she went upstairs to ask about it that day. She didn't expect Charlie to be very capable, as long as he mentioned Tao Qi and Xue Ding's good points when talking to Yang Yi. Her current career depended on these 2 people, and this movie was the most important. It would be even better if Big Boss Yang saw her in a different light. If Charlie knew what Yang Huaishi was thinking, he would definitely tell her that the guy who really had the right to speak was squatting on the ground and yawning in boredom. As they were talking, Tao Qi's phone rang. Sorry, I have to take this. Tao Qi got up and walked a few steps away. Not long after, she came back and said to Yang Huaishi, Sister Yang, Irene said that she and Ronald will be here later. A trace of displeasure flashed in Yang Huaishi's eyes, but she recovered immediately and briefly introduced the 2 to Charlie. Irene was signed by Yi Xing Culture at the same time as Tao Qi. Irene had participated in a TV series before, and her pay was 20,000 per episode. She heard that someone was looking for her now, and her pay was raised to 50,000 per episode. In Yang Huaishi's opinion, Tao Chi's biggest competitor was Irene. As for Ronald, he was a mixed blood of the Three Kingdoms, which actually referred to the Three Kingdoms of East Asia. Zheng Tan didn't understand. If you wanted to be mixed blood, you should have mixed further. What kind of mixed blood was this? Irene was also a supporting character in this movie, and her scenes were similar to Tao Chi's. As for Ronald, he wasn't from I Ching culture. He had just acted in an idol drama and was quite popular among high school students. At the same time, he was also the second male lead in this movie, and his scenes were more than the other supporting characters. Yang Huaxi's hidden meaning was that Ronald had some family background, and he got this movie through connections. Zheng Tan could tell that Yang Huaxi didn't like the two of them, especially Ronald. Zheng Tan didn't like Ronald either. This was a kind of intuition. Soon, Zheng Tan's intuition came true. The person who was walking over, wearing sunglasses and acting like an idol, was Ronald. He was also the guy who almost stepped on Zheng Tan's foot today. When Ronald walked over, Zheng Tan noticed that several girls were glancing in his direction. They hadn't been there before. At the same time, Zheng Tan felt Ronald glancing in his direction, and immediately became alert. "I'll go get 2 stools," Xue Ding stood up and said. After all, there were only 4 seats here, and there was no place for Ronald. Moreover, Ronald was more powerful than him, so Xue Ding didn't want to make things difficult for Yang Huaixi. "Don't stand on ceremony. Sit down, sit down. I can get it myself." Ronald patted Xue Ding's shoulder and walked around. When he passed by where Zheng Tan was squatting, Ronald raised his foot and stepped on Zheng Tan's cat tail. It looked like an unintentional move. When he stepped on it, Zheng Tan quickly retracted his tail and coiled it around his feet, looking up at Ronald. Ronald tilted his head slightly in Zheng Tan's direction and raised an eyebrow. Then, he walked straight to another table, where there was an empty chair. Zheng Tan looked at Ronald's back and narrowed his eyes. It was the second time. Although things shouldn't happen more than 3 times, and before leaving Chuhua City, Jiao Ma had told Zheng Tan not to cause trouble, Zheng Tan wasn't someone with a good temper. He didn't want to give others a third chance to step on him. The first step was on his foot, the second step was on his tail, and the third time might be on his entire body. By then, there would be several scenes with Ronald.